cheating wife comes home to find her lover unconscious and her husband gone without a trace. Nick and Jana Sill were out partying on Friday night. She was eager to have a good time and indulged a bit more than usual in her favorite wine. Lana, Jana's closest friend, and her husband Steve hosted the party and decided to kick things off with a game of truth or dare. They convinced 5 more couples to join, but some of the women were hesitant, especially because Lana could be a bit harsh. The game started calmly enough, with one woman making it clear she wouldn't do anything too wild like showing her bosom. Others agreed to keep the questions reasonable, but as the game went on and the drinks kicked in, the questions became more daring. One woman suggested that any inappropriate questions could be ignored. Eventually, it was Lana's turn again, and she asked Jana, "Truth or dare?" Jana chose truth. "Who was your best lover?" Lana asked. "I suppose it's Nick," Jana replied, influenced by the wine she had consumed. With a giggle, Jana added, "Just kidding." There was a collective sigh of relief. Lana teased Nick, saying, "Well, if you're not number 1, you better fight for it." Nick's reaction was a mix of embarrassment and anger, evident from his flushed face. Jana quickly realized her mistake and tried to rectify it. She assured everyone she was just teasing Nick and that he truly was her best lover. Nick got up, muttered something about needing a beer, and left the game, not returning. Comments like, "Oh my God, Jana," and "Ouch, that's gotta hurt," filled the room. "I thought the dumb blonde stereotype was a myth, but damn, you just told your husband he's second best in front of everyone. Is he even second or is it worse?" Lana, supposedly Jana's friend, remarked. Jana attempted to get up, saying, "I was just kidding, damn it. I'm your friend," Lana suggested. They all helped calm Nick down, feeling the urgency to fix things. Even in her intoxicated state, Jana knew it wouldn't be easy to soothe her husband. She found Nick near the TV screen, not paying attention to the game. "I'm sorry, baby, I was just a little drunk. I thought it was funny, but clearly not. Please come back to the game, let me make things right," she pleaded. "No, just stay away from me. I'm leaving," he replied, standing up to say goodbye to others nearby. Lana approached Jana, asking, "Where's he going?" "Home. I need to apologize before he leaves. I messed up big time," Jana said, about to catch up with Nick. "Let him go, please. Right now, he doesn't want to hear anything from any of us," Jana said, tears welling in her eyes. "That idiot. Stay here, I'll go find him," Lana offered. "No, Lana, don't. You'll only make it worse," Jana pleaded. "We joke around all the time. What's his problem? You didn't cheat, so why is he so upset about being second?" Lana chimed in, trying to be supportive. But Jana's response wasn't what she expected. Instead of agreement, sadness and shame clouded Jana's expression. Lana immediately caught on. "Oh my God, Jana, you did it," she whispered. "Please don't say anything. If Nick thinks anyone else knows, my marriage will be over. Promise me, Lana." "Not a word, not even to Steve," Jana implored. "All right, I won't say a thing, but once you're sober, we need to talk," Lana agreed. "I need to go home. He probably won't talk to me, but I have to try," Jana murmured quietly as she headed towards the backyard gate. Lana returned, declaring, "I'm taking her home to make sure she gets there safely." By the time Lana caught up, Jana had already disappeared through the side door of her house. "Jana!" Lana called out, but Jana just waved and disappeared inside. Jana immediately went upstairs, changed into a nightgown, and climbed into bed. She reached out to touch Nick's shoulder, hoping for a reassuring kiss, but he remained still, unresponsive. Running her nails down his back, she tried to elicit some reaction, but he stayed motionless. She thought she saw a tear escape from his eye. In a final attempt to ease the tension, she whispered in his ear, "Honey, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean it. I love you." But instead of acceptance, he snapped back, "Don't lie to me. I know what you said and what it means. Or just go to hell and leave me alone." With that, he got out of bed, stormed into his den, and slammed the door shut. Jana cried herself to sleep. Morning came late, the events of the night keeping her from her usual early start. The kitchen was bare, no coffee brewing, no dishes in sight. It was clear Nick had left in a hurry, avoiding a face-to-face encounter. Jana felt a deep sense of sadness. Her guilt weighed heavily on her, her mind replaying the hurtful truth she blurted out in a moment of drunken candor. "Actually, no," she had said loud enough for everyone to hear. Their friends couldn't mistake the implication. It seemed far from a playful tease. She hoped that offering a genuine apology and sincere reassurance would convince her husband that her remark from yesterday didn't matter. Unfortunately, her apology was insincere. She was resolute in keeping this truth, as well as the reasons behind it, hidden from him and everyone else. Desperate to rectify her mistake, Jana decided to send her husband a message expressing her regrets about the previous night. "I'm so sorry about last night. With the kids on the way, I felt Lana's party was my last chance to unwind a bit. Admitting I went too far is an understatement. I was so out of it that I thought my behavior was amusing, maybe even playful. I believed I was teasing you, my dear hubby, as any wife would. But the look on your face made it clear I'd made a mistake. Lana chiming in with her own remarks is just her personality. She's unaware of our history and probably meant it in jest. You know she holds you in high regard. Please don't blame her, baby. That's not what I intended. You're the best to me in every way. Forgive me for acting foolishly under the influence, failing to realize how my misguided attempt at humor could hurt you, my beloved. I love you with all my heart. Please come home or at least call me. I love you. With the coffee brewed, Jana sat at the table, holding her head in her hands. She repeatedly questioned aloud why she had said something so foolish. Her phone rang briefly, raising hope that it was Nick, but it turned out to be Lana. Jana initially ignored the call, but Lana called again shortly after, prompting Jana to answer. This conversation was inevitable. Yes, Lana, what's going on? Jana asked. Last night you started to tell me something and then stopped. It's not like Nick to react that way over an innocent joke, Lana said. No, it's not what you think, Jana replied slowly. I'm coming over, Lana decided. No, that's not a good idea, Jana protested. Just put on the coffee. I'll be there in 10 minutes, Lana instructed, not waiting for a response before hanging up. 7 minutes later, Lana walked in through Jana's side door to find a cup of coffee waiting for her on the table, made just the way she liked it. All right, spill it, Lana demanded. Lana, I can't. How long have we been best friends? Haven't I always had your back? Jana pleaded, overwhelmed with guilt and needing someone to confide in. First, swear to me you'll never breathe a word of this to anyone, not even Steve, Jana insisted. Jana, I swear I won't tell a soul. This stays between us. Swear on your children's lives. Oh Lord, what have you done, baby? All right, I swear. I swear on my children's lives I won't breathe a word of this to anyone, Lana vowed, making a solemn promise. This happened 5 years ago, even before we moved here. The insurance company I worked for had a great year and threw a Christmas party a few days before the 25th. Nick was supposed to attend, but his brother had a small fire at his house, causing chaos. My husband and his truck were called to help. Despite my insistence that I didn't need to go, Nick urged me to enjoy myself with my colleagues while he went to assist his brother. I felt obligated not to miss out since I was the executive overseeing this year's holiday parties, including cleanup and office restoration afterward. I prayed that I had insisted on helping with the fire damage instead of getting ready for the party. I hesitated initially. I wanted to make my husband proud. The skimpy black dress, daring bra, and thong were meant to impress and show off as the hot wife. The outfit choice puzzled me since I didn't consider alternatives. My first mistake was deciding I still wanted attention from other men and wearing a provocative outfit. Even though Nick might be annoyed seeing how I dressed for the party, especially since I was going alone with a coworker. Got it, Lana exclaimed. Lana quickly caught on, particularly with a coworker, Jana reiterated. It was all much worse. All right, spill it, girl. Tell me everything from the beginning, every detail, Lana demanded. Okay, damn, I've never said this out loud before. The party was typical. Everyone was merry, drinks were flowing, and some guys were taking advantage of single women under the mistletoe. As the night progressed, I found myself in the company of single girls, which wasn't surprising since my husband wasn't there and I was dressed provocatively. I realized what they were up to and should have put a stop to it, but I was already tipsy and relishing the attention. Two guys in particular, Mark and Jake, kept pushing me to loosen up. They often made suggestive remarks, and to my shame, I sometimes responded in kind. Looking back, I understand I was too flirtatious with men at that time, and I regret not considering the consequences sooner. They kept urging me to do things that wouldn't pass my husband's approval. I knew what I was doing, and worse, I convinced myself that a little fun wouldn't hurt. After all, Nick would never find out, right? They led me to places where others couldn't see. The liberties I permitted escalated as the kisses grew more intense, and over time, my morals eroded. Their boldness increased as they realized my symbolic resistance vanished, especially when the likelihood of being caught decreased. Concealed from prying eyes, the men freely groped my body, and I encouraged them, fully aware of it. Worse, they knew it too. It was finally time to send everyone home. As the one in charge, it fell on me to usher them out, albeit after they assisted in cleaning up. With the place looking fairly restored, I switched off the lights and locked the main room before heading to my office to retrieve my belongings, purse, phone, and car keys. However, I hesitated for a moment, realizing I had likely crossed all permissible boundaries. Designated drivers were arranged for everyone except me, since Nick was supposed to be mine. The only viable solution for the evening was to call a taxi. Upon opening the door to my office and reaching for the switch, Mark seized my hand, preventing me from turning on the bright overhead light that could signal someone was inside. "Let's continue," he said, kissing me on the lips. Initially startled, I began to reciprocate. At that moment, a pair of arms enveloped me from behind, cupping both my bosom, while a firm hardness pressed against my clothed backside. It was Jake. As he began to rub against me, Mark took my face in his hands and kissed me deeply. Clearly intoxicated, their caresses aroused me greatly. Unfortunately, thoughts of my husband were far from my mind. I was too lost and consumed to consider the betrayal. "Looks like some bad guys want to play," I muttered, stuttering slightly. "We were hoping you'd say that," Jake responded, reaching out to switch on the desk lamp for sufficient light without revealing our presence to the outside world. Mark then closed and locked the office door. "I need to stress something here, something I doubt anyone, even you, would believe, but I swear to God it's the absolute truth. When I said I wanted to play, I didn't mean to have lovemaking with them." "You're right about that. Convincing anyone, especially Nick, will be near impossible," I explained. "Hell, the chances of anyone but me believing it are slim to none," Lana chimed in. "I know. I'm fully aware of that, but I need you to believe me. I really, really need you to believe me." "All right, baby, I believe you. I've seen firsthand how a little drink can make someone rationalize things like that," Lana reassured. "I just thought we'd keep kissing and fooling around while the door was locked. The only thing visible from outside is if the main light is on, so I figured I could have some gentle fun without any risk." I know how foolish it sounds now. Damn, I wish I could turn back time, Lana. I don't know if you've ever had two men try to seduce you, but the intensity of that feeling was overwhelming. Jana paused. "Actually, since we're sharing confessions, I have something to add later, but please continue," Lana interjected. "Okay." Despite my resistance, Mark continued kissing me, and I was so absorbed in him that I forgot about Jake until I heard his zipper. My dress rode up, and Jake almost had my rear exposed. Meanwhile, Mark took advantage of the situation too. That was the moment it dawned on me that these two were going to have their way with me. Well, there was a lot of groping first, but then the clothes started coming off. "Yours or theirs?" Lana asked, intrigued by her friend's tale. "Both," Jana continued. "The sensation of two men undressing you while consumed by desire was beyond anything I'd imagined." I weakly protested, saying, "No, I can't do this, no, I'm married," but within moments all I had left was a thong and heels. Being pleasured by two men was the most erotic experience of my life, but what came next surpassed it. They didn't want to stop, and I was in ecstasy. How could anyone compete with such an experience? We were so caught up that it didn't take long until we all reached the peak. It was the best lovemaking I'd ever had. When the intensity waned, thoughts of Nick flooded in, and the magnitude of my betrayal hit me. I pleaded with them to keep our encounter a secret. It was a huge mistake, and I knew my marriage would crumble if the truth emerged. They both promised to stay silent, but I couldn't shake the fear of my betrayal being exposed. Lana sank heavily into a chair. "Now it makes sense why you reacted that way yesterday. Did Nick ever find out?" Lana inquired. Jana burst into tears before she could respond. "If you need a break, it's okay," Lana offered. "No, I need to get it out while I still can," Jana insisted and continued. "I think they were both shaken by how upset I was, so they sincerely promised to keep my secret." That night, I avoided Nick. It was well past midnight when he returned home from helping his brother. The following days were tense. Nick sensed something was amiss, but I denied it until the New Year's party. I wanted to move past it, but I had committed to supervising this year's holiday parties, and I couldn't give Nick any reason to question my reluctance to attend. Jake was conspicuously absent, perhaps out of fear that his wife might suspect something. However, good old Mark was present and heavily intoxicated as usual. With his reputation as a player, I still can't comprehend how I allowed him, of all people, to come near me. Throughout the evening, I attempted to avoid Mark, but as the night progressed and he grew increasingly intoxicated, he became uncomfortably familiar with me. So much so that my secretary Cindy pulled me aside and cautioned, "Be careful, your husband is here this time." Her emphasis on "this time" did not escape my notice. My God, how many people suspect something? I tried to keep my distance from Mark, but by the end of the night, he seemed determined to flaunt my discomfort in front of my husband. When Nick went to the bar for some drinks, Mark seized the opportunity to approach me, grabbed my hand and insisted, "Come on, baby, you haven't danced with me yet." Panicked, I emotionally refused. As Nick returned from the bar with our drinks, Mark remarked, "You weren't so resistant at the Christmas party," gripping my hand, attempting to coax me into dancing with him. I recoiled and demanded Mark remove his hands from me. I was terrified, unsure of how much Nick had overheard. An embarrassed expression crossed my husband's face, quickly replaced by anger. In an effort to defuse the situation, I informed Mark that the bar was closing. However, he insisted on another drink. With Cindy nearby, I shot her a pleading look and signaled for her to take my place. Understanding my predicament, she gestured toward my husband, and then toward the door. I managed to usher Nick out before any further trouble ensued. I assured my husband that Mark was simply intoxicated, and I was relieved that Nick didn't escalate the situation as he easily could have. Back at home, Nick inquired, "What happened?" I attempted to dismiss it, blaming Mark's excessive drinking. However, Nick warned me that if Mark ever approached me again, he would take drastic measures. At breakfast, Nick was still mulling over the events of the previous night and questioned me about what had occurred. Cindy swiftly interjected, asking how she could have handled Mark better than me. Nick then pressed further, questioning why I had behaved strangely at the last party and if I felt guilty about something. He pieced it together, realizing that Mark being drunk couldn't explain his remarks. It was clear he didn't buy the excuse, and pressed me once more, this time with greater intensity. "Well, what happened at the Christmas party?" Feeling dejected, I broke down and confessed that I had gotten drunk and engaged in inappropriate behavior without going into specifics. Then Nick looked me straight in the eye and asked, "Did you have lovemaking with him?" He saw it in my eyes and grasped it even before I answered. There was no point in denying it, so I admitted that I had consumed too many drinks and felt ashamed that I had allowed it to happen. He was furious but didn't press for details, and I refrained from elaborating. Nick left me that day and refused to speak to me. We remained apart for 3 months without any communication. It was agonizing for me until he agreed to start conversing with me again. I pleaded with him at every opportunity to take me back, even suggesting an open hall pass to even the score. Eventually, he agreed to counseling. After several months of therapy, I began to sense that Nick was seeking a path to repair our marriage. I was elated that he seemed willing to reconcile, and I was determined to do whatever it took to salvage our relationship. I anticipated that he would inquire for more details, and I was terrified of what revealing the whole truth would do to him. But to my relief, he refrained from asking those questions. I was overjoyed that I didn't have to choose between lying and revealing the truth, although I realized that withholding the full story is essentially lying by omission. Ultimately, he agreed to reconcile, pledging to do everything possible to forgive me. However, there were conditions. Firstly, I had to sign a postnuptial agreement stipulating that I would receive minimal assets in the event of another infidelity. Another condition was that I resign from my job and we relocate. Additionally, he surprised me by presenting his own hall passes. Although I had suggested it in my desperation for him to agree without probing further, I signed an agreement granting him a couple of hall passes. I believe he needed them more to rebuild his bruised ego than anything else, as I doubt he ever used them. So I agreed to everything, including moving away from our friends and family, all to win back my husband. Fortunately, he was able to secure a lateral transfer in his company, and my background in insurance facilitated my job search. That's when we moved here. I never had to confess the full truth about my betrayal to him, and I remained faithful from then on. I'm sure you understand why I fear that if he knew everything, he would divorce me. That's why my mistake last night could potentially be disastrous. I must stick to the narrative that it was a tasteless joke misunderstood only by him, and that he is unequivocally the best thing in my life. Jana paused, letting her narrative sink in. My goodness, did you have a bacchanalia? I fantasized about that. Tell me again, how was it? Lana asked. Eagerly, reveling in her friend's actions without grasping the peril it posed to the marriage. Damn it, Lana, I nearly lost my husband and I'm still at risk. Then, after a significant pause, Jana confessed, "It was the most thrilling carnal encounter of my life." She added solemnly, "I can never let Nick discover the truth, never." Okay, I understand why you'd say that. I also get that no man can compete with two. It beats my dirty story, Lana added. What did you do? Jana inquired. Okay, I need you to swear to me too. This stays between us. Steve would probably kick me out, Lana asserted, locking eyes with Jana. We have a pact. Nothing spoken here will ever be disclosed to anyone else. Jana reciprocated their mutual trust and then urged her friend to divulge. All right, it's your turn to spill everything, Lana initiated her narrative. Both of us. I've never vocalized this before either. We were planning a party with coworkers coming over for a swim and barbecue. That evening, Steve called me with an urgent issue regarding one of their major accounts. He personally managed this client and would be at least 3 hours late returning home. Ron, Steve's business partner, took it upon himself to step in for Steve and came over under the pretense of assisting me with preparations. He knew their key client had hired Steve, and that Steve needed to personally attend to matters at this client's office, which was about an hour and 10 minutes away each way. My husband is astute in business dealings, but one thing he lacks is discerning when a friend is deceitful. Man, Ron's a womanizer. He went through a divorce due to infidelity. Being single allows him to pursue his targets without concern for repercussions from a spouse. He had his sights set on me for a while, and I was aware of it. I should have alerted Steve, but I was easily swayed by Ron's flattery. I enjoyed the attention and would reciprocate, sometimes shamelessly, when Steve wasn't around. When Ron arrived to help, I was already in a bind. Instead of prepping our backyard, I spent the day lounging by the pool in a tiny bikini, awaiting Steve's return so I could start preparing for our party. I had a couple of margaritas and wasn't intoxicated, but I felt good. I should have gone inside and changed, but I didn't. Ron was clearly enjoying himself, and I relished in letting him watch. We began setting up the patio for our guests. Ron uncovered the grill and positioned it at the center of the patio for easy access. He checked the propane tank's gas levels and briefly lit the grill to ensure it was operational. Then we rearranged some chairs and tables, brought out the beer cooler, stocked the bar, and set up umbrellas. Our guests offered to bring additional holiday appetizers and sides. Once we finished, Ron made us margaritas and suggested we omit mentioning his assistance in preparing for Steve's meeting. We returned to the pool, and Ron commented on how he had worked up a sweat and how inviting the pool looked. Noticing he hadn't brought swim trunks, I teased that he could go without them, promising not to peek. Instead of continuing the playful banter, he began undressing. When he was down to just his boxers, he approached me and suggested we swim together, urging me to remove my swimsuit. I should have fled, but my intoxicated and reckless side prevailed. I stripped and impulsively dove into the pool. Ron joined me swiftly, holding me close. We were both unclothed, and I knew I'd let him have coition with me. I surrendered to him, exploring each other's bodies with caresses. It was incredibly wrong, yet undeniably pleasurable. Then Ron began touching me in a way Steve never had, sending me into a frenzy and granting me one of the most intense climaxes I'd ever experienced. The thrill of something new, so wicked and forbidden, transported me to ecstasy. After I calmed down, Ron suggested it was my turn to reciprocate and assist him in a quick finish. I complied, and we had a few more drinks. He insisted we not waste time and initiated a third round, possessing me fiercely. I was certain I'd be left with bruises as he reached his climax. I begged him to stop, and he approached me with a growl. Tears streamed down my face, feeling hurt and ashamed of betraying my husband. That night, I had to conceal my bruises from Steve, pleading with Ron not to disclose our encounter. He warned that if Steve discovered the truth, it would spell trouble for both of us. So we agreed to remain silent. Thankfully, he hasn't attempted to repeat our escapade. I'm relieved and resolved never to cheat again, regardless of the circumstances. However, we still communicate frequently and play golf together a couple of times each month. Since Ron tends to boast, I'm constantly anxious he'll reveal my secret. Steve mentioned that Ron keeps boasting about some wild woman he slept with but won't divulge her identity. I'm certain he's describing our encounter. The scoundrel is probably relishing in discussing his exploits with his oblivious spouse. If Steve ever learns that Ron is bragging about me, I fear he'll lash out at us both, and perhaps rightfully so, Lana finished, her voice trembling slightly. With these words, Lana concluded her harrowing tale. Later that day, Lana phoned Jana. "Hey friend, is everything back to normal?" "No, Lana. I haven't heard a peep from Nick. 5 years later, I thought we had moved past it. Have you ever heard about this guy Mark?" Lana inquired. "No, but my mom mentioned a coworker named Mark who got roughed up pretty bad when he left the bar. Do you think it was Nick?" "I'm not sure. I'm too scared to ask. Plus, I never want to reopen old wounds and cause him more pain. That's why it's so awful that I messed up last night and made him relive it all over again. I'm really worried he won't leave me." "Honey, he loves you too much. He's just hurt, reliving the fact that you cheated on him. Look, he's already forgiven you for what he knows about. He'll come around, trust me," Lana reassured. "I don't know, I'm terrified, Lana. We were planning to have kids. I had my last drink at your party, and then we were going to start trying to conceive. Now, I'm not so sure," Jana confided. "Are you still planning to get pregnant? That's fantastic," Lana responded enthusiastically. "I stopped taking the pills 3 days ago, but now maybe he's relieved we don't have a child. Who would want to complicate a divorce?" Jana replied, tears streaming down her face. "Listen, he's probably just passed out drunk in his motel room and we'll sleep it off. Don't worry. You'll soon be filled with little swimmers." Hey, my grizzly bear is calling. I gotta go. Hang in there. I'll call you tomorrow, okay? Take care of Steve. We'll talk tomorrow. Bye. Both women drifted off to sleep. Jana spent a long, lonely night waiting on the sofa for her husband, who never returned. At 3 in the morning, exhaustion finally overcame her, and she fell asleep. Nick rose early on Saturday, packed enough to stay away from home for several days, unwilling to face his wife. He headed to a diner for breakfast. As he sipped his coffee, he replayed the events of the previous evening in his mind. That damn woman. That damn woman. So I'm not her best lover? I guess that idiot Mark really knocked her socks off. Damn woman, he muttered angrily to himself. He glanced at his phone and powered it off. Let her figure out where I went, he mused. Nick poked at his ham and eggs, pondering his next move. A short-term question arose. What to do for the rest of the day? Then came the inevitable long-term one. Would he ever return home, or should he divorce this woman? Divorce. Lord, is this what it's come to? It doesn't sit right, but making a decision now when I'm furious might not be wise. Perhaps I should go back and confront that damn idiot again. No, I was lucky not to get caught last time. I need to think. Maybe hitting the golf course would clear my head. That's it. Everything I need is there already. Maybe there I can figure out what to do about my damn disrespectful wife. He joined another couple, having his own cart, which gave him more time to contemplate since he didn't feel like chatting with his cart companion. After the match, he had a couple of drinks, and the first bright spot of the day was seeing his favorite bartender, affectionately known as Susie Q. Susan Bryant was her real name. They always bantered back and forth, flirting playfully. Despite the flirtation, he never attempted to seduce her. Their suggestive exchanges were merely playful conversations. He assumed she was just trying to boost her tips, which indeed worked. Susie Q immediately sensed that Nick's usual carnal banter was absent, and that something was troubling him. When the other golfers left, Nick felt it was the right time and place to continue drinking. Noticing that it wasn't busy, Susie Q approached him. "What's wrong, honey? I miss your usual charm," she started. "Ah, the usual drama at home," he replied. "Come on, darling, you always say that. You can confide in me about anything, sweetheart. That's what I'm here for." Last night, during a game of Truth or Dare, my wife announced to me and everyone else that I wasn't the best lover she's ever had, he confessed. Damn. Is she upset with you or something? I don't believe for a second that's true about you. The way you flirt with me all the time gets me going, she chuckled. I wish you meant that. I need a hot woman to help me relax a bit, he lamented. Do you think I'm hot? She asked, giving him a seductive smile. Hell yes, but I know I'm just a customer and you're doing your job. I get it. I don't stand a chance with you, he replied. She looked him straight in the eyes and said, You do have a chance. This caught Nick off guard. I wish you'd take seriously that you have a chance. A few years ago, my wife messed up. She got drunk and cheated on me with some idiot. After a lot of soul-searching and therapy, I agreed to take her back, but under certain conditions. One of them was for me to have a couple of hall passes to even things out. She gave you free passes to be with other women? Is that for real? Asked Susie. That was the deal. It's even in writing, he confirmed. I'll never tell my husband he's not the best lover, whether it's true or not. It's just not something you say carelessly, she declared. Nick, I'm off at 5 if you want to cash in one of those passes. Be here, Susan said, observing more golfers entering the room before leaving Nick to ponder her proposition as she tended to her new customers. Nick thought to himself, God, I always thought she was just humoring me because I tip well. Maybe she was actually offering me something more. Well, Jana agreed to the passes, and Susie Q might be able to give me what I need to regain my confidence. It was 3 in the afternoon, 2 hours before her shift ended. Nick decided against sitting in a bar getting drunk and deliberating on his next move. Instead, he dropped 2 $50 bills on the counter, totaling $58 to settle the tab, waved to Susan and said, I'll be back. He couldn't shake Susie Q's best attributes from his mind. She possessed an eye-catching 36D bosom that drew everyone's attention. Susie Q herself was a stunning woman, several years his senior but didn't look it. To add to her allure, she had a voluptuous and appealing rear. Considering his options, he muttered to himself, Jana never felt the agony of betrayal, the unbearable pain I had to endure. Perhaps she wouldn't be so promiscuous if she had experienced what I did. To hell with it. I'm going to shower, change, and return to the bar. At 5 to see if Susie Q is serious or not. At 4:45 p.m., Nick returned to the bar, and Susie couldn't help but smile broadly. She poured him a whiskey and cola, placing it in front of him, and remarked, After that last tip, this one's on me. She added, Bill's here to take over the bar. Just give us a moment to close out the register and I'll be ready to go. I'm famished. Any ideas on where we'll dine? As she prepared to leave, Nick phoned and reserved a table at one of the city's finest restaurants. During dinner, he attempted to steer the conversation toward Susie, but she sought a more thorough explanation of why he chose to ask her out. He divulged everything he knew. She revealed only that she was divorced, had been a flirtatious wife, and that this contributed to the demise of her marriage. After dinner, they ventured to a dance club, had a few drinks, and danced. During the third dance, with her holding him tightly, she proposed, "Listen, I understand you're trying to be a gentleman, not rushing straight into bed, but I've made my intentions clear. How about we leave here together?" Without further debate, the bill was settled, and they headed to her apartment. "Care for a drink while I slip into something more comfortable?" she inquired. Nick simply smiled and accepted her offer. As she disappeared into the bedroom, his breath caught in his throat. He managed to utter, "My God, you're stunning." She emerged wearing a Steelers jersey and nothing else. She reached up, placing her hands on the back of his head, drawing him into a passionate kiss. "I'm glad you approve," she murmured, as she guided his hand to her most carnal area. Susie led him toward the bed, kissing him fervently and disrobing him along the way. "Would you consider staying the night? We need some extra time, as I hope you'll explore every carnal possibility," she purred seductively, reclining on the bed. They passionately caressed and stimulated each other. He had never encountered a woman who derived such pleasure from pleasuring a man. They reached climax simultaneously. "Did you enjoy yourself?" she inquired. "It was incredible, truly amazing," he replied, struggling to find the right words to encapsulate the experience. "I'm thrilled you had a good time, but the same rule applies to guys. Promise me, never tell your woman she's not the best," she added. Nick chuckled. "Got it. Lie down, I'll grab us some glasses. We'll regroup, then I'll sort you out again," she instructed. Her flawless bare backside swayed enticingly as she returned to the kitchen. Nick couldn't help but be mesmerized by her seductive movements. After allowing him time to recover, Susie began gently massaging his entire body. This round lasted a bit longer, which suited them both just fine. They reached their climax once more. "Did you ever imagine we'd end up here?" she inquired. "No, never." "Well, maybe I fantasized about it, couple of times while Jana and I were carnal, but it felt a bit awkward. Usually after a day on the field and some playful banter, I'd be in the shower at home, thinking about this," he confessed, nodding toward her impressive bosom. Susie giggled, then added, "I never thought it would actually happen either. I fantasized too, imagining how you'd make me feel. In reality, it's so much better, isn't it?" "Yes, much better. Please stay with me today. I know this is probably a one-time thing, so let's make it special." "It's been a while since I woke up next to a man," she requested. Nick nodded and Susie Q grinned. After recharging sufficiently, she said, "I hope you're ready for the final round." No further encouragement was needed. The next morning, Nick awoke to the aroma of bacon. Susie Q had already prepared coffee and breakfast. As he strolled into the kitchen fully dressed, he asked, "Is all this necessary?" "It's okay. I wanted to go all out," she reassured him with a smile. "Susan," he began, "don't apologize. I know you still love your wife. I'm mature enough to understand. I wanted you just as much as you wanted me last night," she interjected, cutting off his apology. "Besides," she continued, "I'm not cut out for monogamous relationships, which is actually why I got divorced." "I thought it was your husband that—" "He was the biggest fool alive," Nick replied. "He was basically an idiot and had issues with being faithful, but he had his moments. We mutually decided we didn't want to be married." "But that's not your style, is it?" she asserted more than asked. "No, it's not. Look, I need to head home and have a serious talk with my wife." "I'm fine, really. I thoroughly enjoyed last night," she assured him. "Finish the breakfast I made for you. From now on, we'll just be naughty friends again, teasing each other at the club," Susan declared. After finishing his meal, Nick stood up, pulled her close, and kissed her passionately, reigniting her arousal. "I'm off," he said as he headed toward the door. "If you ever need another hall pass, cash it in with me," she added. "You'll be my first choice," he replied with a wave goodbye. Sunday morning, Jana, feeling sleepy and deprived of rest, was awakened by Lana's call. "Hey there, any word from Nick?" "No, Jana. Sorry, we haven't heard anything either. Steve's starting to ask questions. He thinks Nick's reaction was too intense for just some teasing." "You didn't mention it, did you?" "Please tell me you didn't," Jana pleaded. "No, I promise. Don't worry, I won't breathe a word. It's probably just a hangover." "Try not to stress too much," Lana reassured her. "Easier said than done. Did he pack clothes or a shaving kit?" He grabbed some stuff, toothbrush, razor, Jana replied. What about his suits? He usually wears them to work, right? I think they're all in the closet, Jana said. He's got work tomorrow, right? He'll be back today, I'm sure. When he does, shower him with love, Lana advised. But what if he doesn't return or says it's over? Jana let her worst fears surface. That doesn't make sense. He's not going to end things now, after forgiving you. He'll cool off and come home. You might have to swallow some pride, but do what it takes, Lana encouraged. I just want him back so I can show him how much I love him. I think he's pulling in. Gotta go, Jana said, ending the call. When Nick arrived, Jana was already seated at the kitchen table. We need to talk, he said, causing Jana to gasp, half expecting him to end things. You tore my heart out. All those awful images of you with that guy came flooding back. To hear I wasn't your best lover, it felt like your date was more than just a joke, he started. Jana seized the moment, repeating most of what she'd said in her Saturday morning message, hoping to sway him back home. Baby, that's not what I meant. I was drunk, thought I was joking, playing a prank. I wasn't thinking about the past. I was just teasing, like any wife would. Nobody thought I was serious. Even Lana's comment was just in jest. She's been calling, apologizing, feeling awful, blaming herself for our problems, she explained. I don't know. It felt like more than just a joke, and I don't want Lana dragged into this. This is between us. Please tell me you didn't tell her anything else, Nick pressed, fearing Jana might spill the beans. No, baby, I didn't. Just between us, she assured, adding another layer to the lie. I swear that's not what I meant. You're everything to me. Let me make it right, Jana pleaded. Okay, let's say I believe you. But there's something else. On Saturday, I went to the club. When those memories came back, I was furious. I started to resent you for what happened. Even after 5 years, it still hurts, Nick confessed, leaving Jana frozen, uncertain of what came next. Afterward, I lingered at the bar, hoping to drown my sorrows. The guys I was with finished their drinks and left. Susie, the bartender, noticed my downcast mood since we'd always been friendly. She came over and asked what was wrong. I was already quite drunk, so I spilled about last night and how you didn't think I was the best. Susie offered. If I wanted to cash in one of my passes, she'd be off at 5. I went back to the course, playing a few more holes, trying to figure out if I wanted to use her to get back at you. I was also considering a divorce. When Nick mentioned divorce, Jana took a deep breath, not wanting to delay as he continued. I realized ending us wasn't exactly what I wanted, but I needed to alleviate the pain you caused. It may seem petty, but I wanted you to feel the same hurt. Just before the end of the workday, I returned to the bar. Susie understood without a word. Jana was speechless. The gravity of her husband's confession sank in, tears streaming down her cheeks as he went on. We quickly made plans for the evening, including dinner and dancing. Then I spent the night with her. Nick felt ashamed. The free pass he used wasn't free at all. He wanted Jana to suffer, and he succeeded, but the emotional toll on both of them was high. Oh my God, Jana exclaimed, rushing to the bedroom and locking the door. Nick believed trying to talk with her now would be fruitless, so he went to the utility room for his work clothes. After changing, he went outside, started the lawnmower, and began working on the lawn. Wanting to prolong his time away, he also mowed their elderly neighbor's yard, a task he often did. While washing his truck, he noticed her car was gone. He figured she must have left while he was mowing the neighbor's grass. Soon after, Jana returned, parked the car, and emerged with a small bag. Spotting her husband, she didn't approach him but headed inside instead. He assumed she might have dashed off to the store. After completing her tasks, it was 5 p.m, and Nick finally conceded that he had run out of excuses to delay going back inside. Jana was in the kitchen, seemingly preparing dinner, her eyes betraying hours of tears. Did you go to the store? I saw you with the bag, Nick inquired. No, just some things from the pharmacy that I left in the car yesterday while I was out searching for you. Where were you? He persisted. It doesn't matter, she replied. It does matter, he pressed on. I went to your golf club. I wanted to talk to her, Susan, Jana confessed. Jana, that's not going to happen, Nick reassured her. Then she confessed she wasn't keen on being exclusive herself. She also mentioned she was certain you were in love with me. I love you, Nick affirmed. That's not the issue, he added. She also asked if I truly said you weren't my best ever in front of our friends. When I nodded, she questioned whether I was in my right mind to say something like that, or just being foolish. I told her I meant it as a joke. She said there's nothing funny about that, especially in front of friends. Damn, are you ready for her advice? When I said yes, she shared a couple of insights. What were they? Nick inquired. I can't disclose it. It's a secret pact among women, Jana replied, a smile finally breaking across her face. After the truth or dare fiasco, Susan shared that a woman should always uplift a man's ego, particularly in public. Tell him, and others too, that he's the strongest, the most handsome, the smartest, and tops the list as the best lover in the world. Just like you love to hear that you're the smartest, most beautiful, hottest, most loving wife there is. It doesn't have to be entirely true. It's his belief that you see him that way that matters. He wants to be your hero. Let him. Yes, and one more thing, look at him with adoration in your eyes. I'm just saying, don't let him know our secret, or it will only make things worse, she added with a sly smile. Baby, I'm at a loss for words, Nick began, attempting to steer the conversation back to civility. Before anything else is said, answer me. Do you still want to stay married? I love you, and I'm certain I want us to remain together. But Friday shattered me, nearly as much as it did 5 years ago. My ego needed a boost, and fueled by drinks on Saturday, my wounded pride led me to exploit the promise you made when we agreed to stay married. I understand what I promised. 5 years have gone by, and I thought we no longer needed to settle the score. Baby, he started, but Jana cut in. No, don't apologize. I made this agreement. I just didn't anticipate how much it would hurt if you chose to act on it. Nikki, I'm so sorry for causing you this unbearable, enduring pain. I feel awful imagining you in her bed, doing to her what should only be done with me. This mess we're in is my fault. I have to own up to it. I'll accept the consequences of my mistake. I just want to remain your wife. Instead of a verbal response, Nick opened his arms and Jana rushed into them, embracing him desperately. Nikki, are we okay now? I agreed to a few hall passes, but I don't think I can handle it if you're going to continue with this bartender. Only you know the answer for sure, since I never asked for details about when it happened. I was too devastated to ask at the time, even during our counseling sessions. I didn't inquire if there was more. I suppose I didn't want to know if it was worse than what I already knew, the thing I was going to divorce you over. I wanted your actions to be a forgivable mistake. Was there more to it than I already know? Jana gasped, struggling to maintain composure and avoid breaking down. She mentally weighed each possible answer and its potential consequences. Was there more? What haven't you told me? Nick asked, his tone irritated yet tinged with fear. The moment of truth had arrived. Jana confessed to her drinks-induced, lust-driven bacchanalia, which provided her with the most fulfilling carnal experience of her life, that she cheated with 2 men, not just one. She was certain that revealing this fact would likely lead to losing her husband, or she must summon every ounce of strength, look him squarely in the eye, and lie convincingly. Jana had been pondering how to answer this direct question for 5 years. She reasoned that disclosing everything would inflict even greater pain on Nick and likely end their marriage. Neither option was acceptable to her. She concluded that this would be her burden to bear, a sacrifice she must make to salvage her marriage and shield it from unnecessary agony. Though initially taken aback, her response came promptly and didn't seem fabricated. He had no clue she'd been preparing for this moment for so long. She lied as if her life depended on it. No, my love, I gave that idiot access to my body once. Let's call it even. We both need to let this go, or it will destroy our marriage. If you can truly forgive me and let go of my past mistake, I won't breathe a word about your encounter with Susan. I need this to be over. Do we understand each other? She pleaded with her eyes. Yes, I need it to end too. What we did to each other caused immense pain. I agree that if we keep dwelling on it, we won't survive. I don't need passes anymore, he said. I love you, he continued. I love you more than you realize. I'll never again make you doubt that you're my best at everything, she replied. Both of them set aside the events of the previous weekend and those from 5 years ago. There would never again be a reason to dredge up a malignant past. In the days following their reconciliation, best friends Jana and Lana continued to confide in each other. They both agreed they needed to bury the truth of the past for their marriages to thrive. They pledged to never speak of their past indiscretions or their consequences again. An unexpected outcome of Jana and Nick's conflict was that Lana woke up to the dangerous path she was on, and it scared her. She intentionally changed her interactions with other men. Steve noticed the change in Lana's behavior and questioned her about it. She explained that she realized she had been taking him for granted and was determined to fix their relationship. Steve also noticed an increase in the frequency and intensity of their carnal encounters. Was Susie Q's wise advice passed on to Lana? 3 months after their reconciliation, Jana's birth control failed, and she became pregnant. Nick was overjoyed. Their new chapter as a loving family began without looking back. A year after the truth or dare incident, Ron got blackout drunk while golfing with Steve and revealed his affair with Lana. Steve's reaction was immediate. He punched Ron, knocking him to the ground. Ron's golf bag was thrown off the cart, leaving him on the 16th tee. Returning home, Steve confronted Lana, who immediately confessed and begged for forgiveness. Steve moved out for several months, weighing his options. Ron and Lana had agreed that it would be detrimental if Steve found out about the affair. Ron accepted a settlement from Steve, regretting his actions. Lana's ordeal scared Jana, but Lana managed to survive the divorce and start anew as a single mother. Years later, Lana met a man she had previously encountered at a work convention. They started dating, got married, and relocated to his home state. The once close friendship between Jana and Lana suffered due to deceit, now reduced to occasional Christmas cards and random phone calls. Only 4 people knew the truth about Jana's indiscretion. The only one who could threaten Nick and Jana's marriage was Jana herself, and she vowed never to do so.
Overheard girlfriend's call with affair partner, canceled the proposal, and blocked her on every platform. I, 38 male, just found out my girlfriend, 36 female of 5 years, cheated on me. And I found out in the worst way. Just some background info on me: I've never been married, nor do I have any kids. It's not that I don't want either, life just hasn't had those plans for me yet, I guess. Anyway, to the story. Friday after work, I left to go on a weekend trip with the guys to one of my buddies' cabins on the lake. Nothing too crazy, fishing, drinking games, just good old fun. Usually we do these trips about every 3 months to get time to ourselves and give our significant others a break from us. I usually stay through the entire weekend and just leave from there to go to work on Monday morning. However, this weekend I left my laptop in the office room and forgot to grab it. So, around 4 p.m. I started to head home, figuring I'd be there by 6. Let's call her Rachel. She wouldn't have eaten by then, so I called in an order at her favorite Italian place, stopped and picked it up, and headed to the house. I walked in, and everything seemed normal. I could hear Rachel laughing in the kitchen, so I figured I'd just walk in and surprise her. As I got closer, I started to overhear the conversation she was having on the phone, and in an instant my life was shattered. I assumed she was talking to her sister, or maybe one of her friends, but the conversation basically went like this. Last night was just amazing. He was such a considerate lover. I'm telling you, I've never had anything like it. We met on Tinder and he took me out last night. By the time we made it through the door, we barely made it to the sofa. Oh God, big, like twice as big as insert my name. I'll definitely be taking him for a test drive again. After that line, I just dropped the food on the floor. Rachel heard it and turned around. By that time, I already had tears welling up in my eyes. She hung up the phone and tried to get to me, but I just pushed her off, went up to the office, grabbed my laptop, and left. Rachel has been hysterically texting and calling for the past 4 days, and I haven't answered once. I'm staying at a motel a couple of towns over, so I doubt she will be able to find me. My buddies and mom have called, as Rachel has frantically been trying to locate me. But I've assured everyone I'm okay, and there's nothing to worry about. My life has been ruined by a stupid phone call. I really thought this was the girl I was going to spend the rest of my life with. I'm an only child, and my mom keeps reminding me she wants grandkids. I had planned on proposing this year on the 4th of July, as it would be our 6th-year anniversary. I've already got the ring, and my buddy and his wife already knew about the plan, as they are the ones who set us up and hosted the 4th cookouts. Any advice from you on here would be appreciated. This is the first time I've dealt with infidelity in any relationship. I'm so broken at this point. Do I contact Rachel? Should I hear her out after that phone call? The thought of her just makes me sick to my stomach. Thank you in advance for anyone who reaches out. Ask for advice, and the audience definitely has some. First up, she was bragging about cheating on you. You will never forget what you heard. Time to move on. Someone else says, to add to this, she showed you who she is. Be glad you learned now and not after being married for many years. Another one says, you've already heard everything from her you need. Don't look back. Best case scenario, arrange for your friends to collect your things and never speak to her again. The only closure to be had in this is from her side. Never give her a chance to apologize. Don't talk to her friends. Or if your mutuals try to give you a message from her, ghost them too. Make a post to social media explaining what happened. Tag her. One more opinion? Yes, do this. Since you're a nice guy who probably can't imagine doing this to her, you will want to try and understand and fix things. You'll try to be a pick-me. Make it loud in public so you can't go back. You dodged a bullet, trust me. I found out this past year that half of my life is a lie. After 27 years together with 3 kids, my wayward wife cheated on me multiple times over those years. I had an opportunity to leave her the first year we ever dated, when I found out she probably cheated on me, but I tried to understand and fix things. Don't be me. Who needs a 6th anniversary when you can celebrate the newfound freedom of not having to share your sofa with someone who has a penchant for Tinder escapades? As for closure, just remember, closure is overrated. It's like that elusive last slice of pizza at a party. You can search for it all night, but chances are it's already been devoured by someone else, leaving you with nothing but greasy regrets. So take the advice from your fellow internet therapists and make like Houdini, disappear from her life faster than a magician's assistant in a box trick. And if you really want to put a cherry on top of this mess, go ahead and make that social media post. Tag her, add some confetti emojis, and let the world know that you're officially back on the market for someone who values fidelity over sofa shenanigans. Update. Hello everyone. First off, I would like to thank everyone for their kind words. I've had a very stressful week, and while I did not feel up to replying to anyone's posts, I want you all to know that I read them. And your words helped me through this week. This has been a devastating event for me, and each and every one of you that commented or reached out through chat brightened my day just a tiny bit. With that said, here's the most recent update. Last Friday night, after my buddies got to the hotel, I explained what I had heard on the phone call. All three of them were stunned, to say the least. They asked if I had seen any signs of this, and to be honest, I really hadn't. I said I didn't know what I was going to do. I informed my one buddy that the proposal was off, and given the circumstances, he completely understood. One thing I had my buddies do when they left their houses was turn off tracking, in case their significant others were checking and getting back to Rachel. I know Rachel isn't close with one of the wives, but at this point, I didn't want to take any chances. That night, we spent the night at the hotel bar, and I tailspun pretty hard, shot after shot after shot. It wasn't pretty. My buddies were getting calls all night from their significant others asking where they were, and to their credit, they stood their ground and backed me up, just saying that we were safe and not to worry. One asked to speak to me after assuming that we were where we were, but I didn't want to talk to her. She kept saying Rachel is worried and just wants to come home. I just told my buddy to deal with it, and I'd fill them in another time. I spent most of the night hitting on the bartender, which I'm not proud of, and a couple of girls who were traveling for work. The next day, I thanked them all for spending time with me, and they took off back home. This week, I had one of my buddies scope out the house we were renting, as it was on his way to work. And he gets to work after Rachel and I would have already left for the day. Rachel had taken Monday and Tuesday off but went back to work on Wednesday. As soon as he informed me of this, I went to the house and started packing as much stuff as I could. The house was a mess, dishes in the sink, clothes lying everywhere, trash was full of takeout and ordered food. It took me about 3.5 hours to get all my crap out. Before I left, I cleaned up for Rachel as a final gesture. That afternoon and evening, I got flooded by Rachel with calls and texts after she realized that I had come home and gotten all of my things. So for now, I'm staying at my mother's house until I can find a place of my own this fall. I spoke with the landlord, and without Rachel's signature, he won't remove me from the lease, meaning I have to cover my half of it until October. My mom has said I can stay with her until then, at which point I will try to find a new place. I know, a 38-year-old moving back in with his mother. How amazing life has treated me. I finally contacted Rachel on Thursday and told her we could meet up at a local bar and grill downtown Friday evening. I told her one of my buddies would be attending to make sure everything was on the up and up. She complained for a few minutes, saying she wanted me to come home and talk with her so we could move past this. But I told her if she wanted to see me, this is how it was going to be. Eventually, she agreed. So Friday night, Rachel shows up after my buddy and I had been there for about an hour. I had already eaten and took a couple of shots of Ciroc to calm me. We sat down and she wanted to make small talk, asking about me and blah blah blah. I cut that garbage off. I told her I had a list of questions. Immediately, her eyes welled up. I asked her how long this has been going on. She swore this was the first and only time. I told her to cut the crap. I said there was no chance we were ever getting back together, so just tell the truth so I can have my closure and move on with my life. She stuck to her guns for a few minutes, but then, as most of you predicted, she came clean. Every time I went on those trips for the past 2 years, she thought I was going to cheat on her, so she was having her fun too. This set me off. I told her she was using this as an effing excuse to just sleep around. I then asked who she was talking on the phone with, but she refused to give me an answer. For this, I asked if they use condoms, and she hesitated sometimes. I said she's lucky I got an STD test because I'm clean, so she doesn't have to worry about getting one unless her most recent horse didn't use one. Finally, before I left, I told her about my plans for the July 4th proposal. I showed her the ring and told her that I was going to propose at her friend's party because that was where they introduced us. It was around here that she just started crying. She begged for another chance. I told her that I will always love her, but we are over. So yeah, she's been messaging me all day, but I'm going to block her here soon. So, I'm just sitting here eating some B-dubs and drinking beer while watching the fights. Hopefully, Poirier wins, but I'm doubting it. My life is a train wreck. Anyway, thanks guys for listening. I don't know if I'll update again, as I doubt I will ever talk to that CU next Tuesday again. Now, the community has some thoughts. I knew she was going to say it was only once. They always do that, dummies. Also this line, every time I went on those trips for the past 2 years, she thought I was going to cheat on her. So she was having her fun too. Blame-shifting classic cheater move. It's your fault, Op? I think not. I'm sorry your landlord didn't let you out of the lease, but at least you have your mom. It's not ideal, but it's only temporary. 100% her loss. Too bad she was about to become someone's wife. A good man chose her, wanted her, and she threw it all away for fun. It's time to focus on you and your healing. Go easy on the alcohol. Be careful. You're going to be okay. Another person has some more advice. Op, I'm glad that you are clean. And sad that she was such a piece of crap and used as justification that she thought you were going to cheat on her on those trips. Sad also that she didn't want to tell you who she was talking to, but I bet it must be someone in the inner circle of friends and most possibly one of the wives of your buddies. She didn't want to give her, because that could cause trouble with the male friend for supporting a cheater, and might as well, she was doing that too. So, warn your buddies of this possibility. Now, about her reaction and manner in the restaurant, she showed no remorse at all and even tried to trickle truth, because if she were remorseful for what she did, she would have broken before the ring thing. She came to her senses about her stupidity when you showed her that ring and talked about the proposal. Well, OP, now it is time for you to leave alcohol and start your healing travel. Hope everything goes well, and please, if you come to find out who was on the other end of that call, update us. It sounds like you've been navigating through a minefield of betrayal and bourbon. Speaking of dodging bullets, it sounds like you're narrowly missing becoming a cautionary tale for future generations of what not to do when your partner is a serial swiper. But hey, at least you've got your health, right? No need to worry about uninvited house guests from the land of STDs crashing your pity party. As for Rachel, well, it sounds like she's got about as much remorse as a cat caught shredding your favorite sweater. Blaming you for her little side jaunts is like blaming a pothole for your DUI, classic deflection. But we see through that facade faster than a magician's sleight of hand. And let's not forget the grand finale at the bar and grill, where you served up truth bombs hotter than their buffalo wings. Showing her that ring was the cherry on top of this dumpster fire of a relationship. Update 2. Hey there, fellow Redditors. I just want to thank each of you for the kind words. It means a lot to me. A few things have happened in the last day, so I figured I'd fill you in. Nothing too exciting, but nonetheless, here it is. Rachel is no longer invited to the 4th cookout, so I'm free and clear and don't need to worry about any confrontation with her. If you remember in my last post, while at the bar, one of the wives was trying to talk to me. She is the wife that hosts the 4th cookout. Apparently, Rachel had told her that she had only cheated once and it was a huge mistake, and that's why she was trying to get me to talk things out with her. When I spoke with her this past Tuesday, I let her know the whole truth. She immediately called Rachel, who confirmed my line of events, was livid, and started yelling at her, telling her it would be best if she didn't show up to the event on the 4th because I was going to be there. Frankly, what she did to me was vile and disgusting. She then asked me to forgive her and said she had no idea. I explained it wasn't her fault, and she had nothing to ask for forgiveness for. We were both sold a lie by someone we cared about. As for who was on the other end of the phone call with her, I can only imagine it was her sister, the 2 wives who were friends with her, and I remained solid that they had no idea Rachel was doing this, as apparently on Saturday evenings while we were away, they would have a girls' night at my house until about 11 p.m. and talk about typical girl garbage and drink wine. The one who isn't even friends with her but partook in these events confirmed it. The other thing that makes me think it was her sister is I've attempted to reach out to her 3 times now and I've gotten no text back. No call back? Nothing. Her mother has called and said she's upset about the breakup and asked if there is anything they can do to change my mind, but I told her that's just not happening. I went back to work on Monday after taking the week off, so I'm back to my normal routine now. No more booze in the near future, my liver will thank me for that. This community has helped me a lot, and I personally wanted to thank each and every one of you for all of it. I don't know if I'll update this account again, as it seems this is the end of the situation. Fingers crossed, by the way. Rachel has been blocked on all platforms, so right now she has no way to contact me. The cookout host said she isn't doing good right now, as she told me that before I explained what really happened. But, as is life, I'm not doing good either, but I'm moving on and putting all this behind me. Thanks again, community, y'all rock! First off, kudos on uninviting Rachel from the cookout. Who needs a side of infidelity with their potato salad, am I right, OP? As for Rachel's mystery phone pal, sounds like her sister's got some explaining to do. Maybe she's busy perfecting her "I had no idea" speech while trying to hide the guilt-induced sweat stains. And her mother's desperate attempts to salvage the wreckage? Well, at least someone's still holding on to the sinking ship of denial. Back to work and no more booze? Way to go, OP! Sounds like the start of a thrilling new chapter in the saga of life after Rachel. Who needs liquid courage when you've got the unwavering support of an internet community? Keep blocking, keep moving forward, and remember, there's always a brighter tomorrow, even if it's just a glimmer on the horizon of your ex-free future. Do you have a similar story? Share it with us in the comments below. And thank you for joining us today.
I think most guys find out if their wife is cheating by coming home unexpectedly, overhearing a conversation, or finding evidence. In my case, it was simpler. My wife emailed me. Though unintentional, I figured her email program suggested my name, and she clicked without checking, a common mistake, especially when in a hurry. I was surprised to get a note from my wife after 18 years of marriage, titled, "About Yesterday." Since yesterday was a regular Wednesday, I wondered why Anne emailed me about it. Reading the message, she expressed how wonderful yesterday was and her anticipation for next week. She called herself "Your Lady." I was at work all day on Wednesday, and as far as I knew, Anne was too. We didn't even talk on the phone. Despite her unusual cheerfulness when she came home, the betrayal was obvious. My first thought was to confront her in the evening, demand an explanation or a confession. However, being logical, I considered she might deny the letter's meaning, come up with an alternative explanation, or pass it off as a joke. What could I say? My unfounded accusations might not reveal anything. After thinking it over, I decided to wait. It would be interesting to see if Anne realizes her mistake and explains herself. If not, I've been warned and can use the information about her next date. Anne sells real estate, so her hours are irregular. She came home much later than me that night. I watched her closely, but her behavior seemed normal. If she knew the letter was a mistake, she didn't show it. I didn't hint that something was wrong either. The evening passed routinely, but I couldn't sleep. Instead, I analyzed the problem to untangle the knot. There might be a completely innocent explanation. Acting rashly could destroy our marriage, and I loved my wife. If the letter proved an affair, my marriage was under threat, and I needed to take action. The next morning, I went back to analyzing and contacted a detective agency to follow my wife. If she did nothing unusual on Wednesday, it wouldn't ease my fears, but I'd feel better. If my fears were justified, I'd find the truth and take appropriate measures. After doing everything I could at that moment, I put it aside and got back to work. Next Wednesday seemed normal. Anne and I left for work and returned home late. Nothing seemed abnormal in her appearance or behavior. I sat in my office reading stories and tried to hide signs of anxiety. On Thursday, I met with the detective agency. Although not very emotional, I could read emotions. The detective confirmed my suspicions with photos of Anne at a motel near the airport, entering a room with a man and leaving hand in hand. The detective told me it's always unpleasant to confirm suspicions. I thought for a minute and asked for help again. If the motel is their regular meeting place, I wanted photos of what's happening in the room. The detective agreed, mentioning I'd need to pay the motel manager. I nodded, and the proof would be paid. Back in my office, I couldn't concentrate on work. Now that doubts were removed, my ability to think seemed to disappear. I gave up working and focused on making plans. In addition to confirming my wife's infidelity, I understood why Anne accidentally sent the letter to me. I knew her lover, our neighbor, Mark Bradshaw. My name, McBishop, must have been suggested by the email program. Knowing Mark and his wife were our friends made the situation more painful. I had to do something, but the question was, what exactly? For hours, I went through various options, from revenge fantasies to begging Anne not to leave. Questions about the affair tormented me, but I finally decided on a plan to achieve my goals. I'm sorry, the detective said it's always unpleasant for us to confirm your suspicions. What do you want us to do now? After thinking for a minute, I told him I needed their help again. It seems the motel is their regular meeting place. If that's true, can you take photos of what's happening in the room? The detective didn't hesitate. We have a lot of experience getting such evidence. You might need to pay the motel manager for cooperation. If that's okay with you, we can guarantee results. I nodded. I'll pay for the proof. I went back to my office, but surprisingly, I couldn't focus on work. With all doubts removed, my ability to think seemed to vanish. In the end, I gave up working and concentrated on making plans. Besides confirming my wife's infidelity, I understood why Anne accidentally sent the letter to me, not him. I knew her lover, our neighbor, Mark Bradshaw. Since my name is McBishop, the email program must have suggested my name after Anne typed the first two letters. It's careless not to double-check, I thought, but emotions distract lovers. Knowing Anne's lover increased my sense of betrayal. Mark and his wife Bobby were our friends. We often had lunch or went to the movies together, and I never noticed a spark between Anne and Mark. Was I blind? Or were they good at deception? Anyway, I knew I had to do something. The question was what? For hours I went through various options. At times revenge fantasies flashed through my head, and I imagined begging Anne not to leave. Questions about why the affair began and how long it lasted tormented me. Anger and self-pity were intertwined. Finally, I decided I not only knew what I wanted, but had a good plan. My plan includes 2 separate actions happening simultaneously. I think of them as divide and conquer, separate 2 lovers and win her heart again. The first part uses my knowledge to drive a wedge between them. The second is an all-out campaign to win back Anne's love by becoming the perfect husband. I'll show her the downside of her relationship with Mark and the benefits of resuming a relationship with me. I made notes, listing actions, planning timing, and working out interdependencies. An essential element is keeping them in the dark about my knowledge. It requires restraint, but I felt I could do it. I wouldn't start until I got another report from the detective agency, but I could take steps to prepare. I bought a recording system for our home phones and a voice-activated device hidden in Anne's car. Tapping our home phone closed that communication channel. Although I couldn't tap her mobile, the car was likely where she'd call Mark. I wasn't worried about calls from work. She was unlikely to have a private conversation there. My next step was getting into Anne's email. Her home computer accessed her work email. She protected it with a password, but I knew where she kept passwords. It didn't take long to access it. I arranged for copies of all messages to be forwarded to me. Their affair seemed to be in the honeymoon stage, and my task was to end it as soon as possible. Now, I waited for the detective agency to prepare photos of their next meeting. Surprisingly, they presented video and audio along with the photos, an unpleasant surprise. Summoning my courage, I started observing their closeness moments. To my surprise, there was a display of tenderness and perhaps even love between them. The depth of their closeness was painful, making me question if my plan could really succeed. Regardless, with nothing to lose, I decided to press on. My wife, not very patient and adverse to disappointments, was a key target. I hoped to exploit this weakness to disrupt her relationship with Mark. Simultaneously, knowing her romantic nature, I saw an opportunity for another part of my plan. Having copies of all her emails gave me a clear advantage in planning my intervention. Their next email exchange provided all the information I needed to initiate the first part of my plan. Are we still on for Wednesday? Anne. Absolutely. One time, one place. I can't wait. Mark. On the day of their next date, I drove to Anne's office, parking discreetly. As soon as she returned from lunch, I casually walked past her parking lot, ensuring no one was around, and then ducked next to the car. In a minute, I unscrewed the valve cover on the tire, releasing the air. Then I drove back home, pondering what she would do without transportation at work. Sure enough, 20 minutes before Anne was supposed to meet Mark at the motel, she called me, asking for help. I assured her not to worry, and mentioned that my workload was light that day so I could fix her car. I explained that I just needed to finish one thing before heading over. I waited an additional 15 minutes before leaving, almost arriving at the scheduled time for Anne's meeting with Mark. When I got there, she was waiting by her car, expressing impatience. I apologized for the delay, explaining that the job took longer than expected. As Anne paced in despair, I changed her wheel slowly and methodically. I strategically parked my car behind hers, ensuring she couldn't leave until I finished. After putting on the spare tire, loading the flat one into the trunk, and returning after washing my hands, over an hour had passed since she was supposed to meet Mark. I apologized again, hoping it wouldn't negatively impact her relationship with the client. She resignedly stated, "He just has to understand." During the tire change, I noticed Anne's cell phone ringing several times, but she avoided answering, likely to sidestep a conversation with Mark in my presence. My suspicions were confirmed when I returned to my office and saw an excited correspondence between them. Mark had been waiting at the motel for over an hour, expressing frustration about the flat tire. I thought, good, realizing I had disrupted their plans a bit. That evening after dinner, I took Anne to the sofa, placed her feet on my lap, and provided her with a foot massage. I explained that I understood she had a challenging day and wanted to do something nice for her. Initially questioning my motive, she soon relaxed as I continued to work on her legs, and a pleased expression appeared on her face. Throughout the week, I waited before taking the next step. On Monday, a sizable floral arrangement with a postcard was sent to her office, expressing appreciation for the best wife a man can have. Although she might have hidden any remorse well, she warmly thanked me upon returning home, sharing the positive impression it made on her colleagues. Curious about the gesture, she inquired about the occasion, noting that I had never done anything similar before. I responded by hugging her and expressing my desire to change that pattern. I explained that the idea came to me when considering what might happen if she had a flat tire on the highway. I wanted her to know how dear her love was to me. She scrutinized me for a moment, but then hugged me tightly, saying, "That's so sweet of you, darling. It really means a lot to me." I couldn't help but wonder if she felt guilty. From her email, I learned that the lovers were planning a special meeting in a few days. I wanted to disrupt their plans, but this time I felt it might be suspicious if I messed up Anne's car again. So I let her go to the meeting place without hindrance, but followed her discreetly. While she entered the room Mark had booked, I drove around to the back of the motel and entered through the side door. The motel was modest enough, and there were no security cameras to record me turning on the fire alarm in the hallway. I waited outside until I saw the guests being taken to a safe spot in the parking lot. I didn't spot Anne and Mark, but I figured they were in the crowd, probably upset like wet chickens. Back in my office, I happily watched emails flying between the disappointed lovers. Anne, what nonsense. I'm so angry I'm about to scream. Mark, I'm sorry, but it's not my fault. Anne, next time choose a place that won't be a fire hazard. Yes, it looks like my Anne, I thought. When she arrived home from work, I noticed she was still upset. However, her mood shifted from tension to surprise upon seeing the dining table adorned with linen napkins and our fancy china. The aroma of her favorite dish cooking on the stove elicited mock disbelief as she looked at me. In response to her question about my sudden culinary efforts, I modestly explained that I had called her office in the afternoon. Learning that her client appointment was delayed, I assumed she wouldn't want to cook upon returning home. Although fear briefly crossed her face, she recovered quickly and expressed gratitude, saying, "That's so sweet of you, darling. You treat me so well." After dinner, I insisted that she not help with the dishes and escorted her to the office before turning on my favorite TV show. As I returned to the kitchen, I sensed her eyes on me and felt confident that my plan was progressing successfully. Despite any doubts Anne might have harbored about her affair, the next letter I intercepted from Mark made it clear that he remained undeterred. He expressed a desire for another encounter with my wife and planned to enhance the experience. Reading Mark's email, I cursed his persistence and regretted Anne's willingness to continue. It was evident that other actions were necessary. I waited until noon the day before their supposed meeting and called the Hyatt Hotel. I informed the clerk, identifying myself as Mark Bradshaw, that I needed to cancel my room reservation for the next day. The clerk assured me that my cancellation was helpful due to a large conference they had planned. Satisfied with this information, I decided to visit the Hyatt to observe what would transpire. Sitting with a view of the reception desk, I concealed myself behind a newspaper. A married couple arrived just in time, appearing affectionate and engaged in conversation. However, their mood shifted dramatically upon discovering they had no room. Mark expressed frustration, insisting that he had booked a room days ago. The clerk apologized, explaining that the order had been canceled. Mark attempted to make a new reservation, but the hotel was fully booked. Anne, visibly upset, urged him to leave. Disappointed, Mark followed her to the parking lot, attempting unsuccessfully to calm her down. Once both had left in their cars, I thought with satisfaction, "My work here is finished." When Anne returned home, I intercepted her at the door, informing her that we were leaving. Before she could object, I guided her to my car, opened the door for her, and took the driver's seat. Responding to her question about our destination, I smiled and mentioned that I had a little surprise planned for the evening. I turned on the radio to some quiet music, and we drove in silence. She observed me with curiosity, attempting to discern my plans. Visibly concerned, she inquired why we were coming to the Hyatt. In response, I winked and assured her that she would see. We entered the hotel elevator, and I selected the button for the top floor. Soon, We found ourselves in the rooftop restaurant at the Hyatt Hotel, known for its signature rotating dome. I provided the head waiter with my name, and he acknowledged our presence, stating that we had arrived just in time. Following that, he led us to a table on the outer edge, offering a view of the city lights. Curious, Anne asked suspiciously why I had chosen this place. I explained that there was no specific reason, just that I thought it would be a great setting for my pretty wife. She tensely smiled at the compliment. Inquiring further, she asked how I managed to get us a table, mentioning the big convention in town. I casually explained that it was not a problem. I had called that day and booked a table. Although Anne didn't react, I knew my success contrasted sharply with Mark's failure. Continuing, I mentioned that I had booked a table as soon as I found out about their rendezvous plans and took the liberty of ordering. She expressed her gratitude, saying she didn't mind. Thankful for my concern, she relaxed. Her delight increased as the waiter brought a bucket of ice and a bottle of champagne. After a few toasts, she cheered up. When the waiter brought oysters on half a shell, she was delighted. Internally, I acknowledged that I wasn't a big fan of oysters, but Anne loved them as the main course. The waiter then brought a salad of salmon niqua with black olive sauce, impressing Anne. With a smile, she remarked that she thought I was going to order something heavy, like a big steak. I reassured her, saying that the salad was the perfect option, knowing she liked salads, and besides, we didn't want to eat too much. She looked at me questioningly, but I didn't provide any additional information. For dessert, the waiter brought 2 bowls of fresh raspberries with a spoonful of whipped cream and liqueur glasses filled with Grand Marnier. Anne thoroughly enjoyed it. Driving home, she unbuckled her seatbelt and snuggled up to me. The combination of drinks and oysters seemed to have the desired effect. Sensing she might be both upset and excited after the failures of her recent dates, I led her straight upstairs to our bedroom. I suggested she change into her nightgown while I took care of other things. As she turned to the closet, I quickly checked the guest bedroom to ensure everything was ready. Returning, I was pleased to see she chose a transparent black nightgown that concealed and revealed the curves of her body. Guiding her to the guest bedroom where scented candles burned around the open bed, I explained that touch and smell would be the only senses she needed that day. Placing a sleep mask over her eyes, I led her to the bed and undressed her, laying her on fresh linen sheets. Waving a bottle of almond butter under her nose, I instructed her to smell it. I poured some water into my hands to warm her up and began with a short foot massage. She moaned with pleasure, and I continued, gradually moving up to ensure she was completely relaxed. Focusing on her shoulders and arms, I turned her over and repeated the process on her back until she moaned again. Our shared pleasure reached its peak in a culminating moment before we collapsed. I removed the mask from her face, and it seemed she either fainted or fell asleep from exhaustion. Carrying her to our bedroom, I covered her with a sheet, and she quickly drifted off to sleep. After a brief sponge bath, I returned to bed, feeling satisfied with how the evening had unfolded. Anne and I typically followed different schedules, but she woke up early the next morning. Upon going downstairs, I found that she had already made coffee and breakfast. Her eyes sparkled as she expressed her gratitude for the special night. I responded, expressing my happiness that she enjoyed it and acknowledging that I would remember it for a long time. She gave me a smile, and I sensed that Anne and I were making real progress. Later that day, I intercepted an email confirming that Mark was still attempting to arrange a meeting with her. Mark apologized for the Hyatt Hotel incident, expressing confusion about losing his reservation. Anne replied, suggesting maybe it wasn't meant to be. Mark urged her not to give up and proposed spending Saturday together at their lake house since Bobby was leaving town. No booking issues, no fire alarms, just a hot time. Signed with love, Anne. Knowing Mac always plays golf on Saturdays, Mark suggested leaving while Mac is there. Mark eagerly anticipated being with Anne again. It was clear to me that my plan had reached a critical point. I felt the strategy of divide and rule gaining strength. I needed to do something this weekend to avoid losing my progress. Their new plans posed a real problem. I couldn't cancel my golf game, and Anne could find an excuse to leave. Touching her car was out of the question. Suspicion could jeopardize everything. I needed a way to get Anne to change her plans at the last minute. Suddenly, a brilliant idea struck me. The perfect solution with just one phone call. I stuck to my routine for the rest of the week, but on Friday night, I slyly swapped Anne's mobile phone battery with a dead one. If she tried calling Mark this weekend, it'd be on her home phone, allowing me to listen in on the conversation. On weekends, Anne and I dress casually. However, when Anne came downstairs on Saturday morning in a beautiful skirt and blouse, I took notice. As my departure time for golf approached, Anne watched me with some apprehension, likely because I hadn't made a move to put on my usual golf pants and shirt. When 10 a.m. came, and I showed no intention of leaving, it was clear she was preparing an excuse for why she needed to leave. Growing impatient, she turned to me, demanding to know if I was playing golf. Then the doorbell rang. Anne, puzzled, opened the door to find her sister Miriam, who Mac had invited for the weekend. The women hugged excitedly. Anne, surprised but pleased, welcomed Miriam. Miriam explained that Mac had invited her at the beginning of the week, since she had no plans. Anne and Miriam, though close, didn't see each other often due to the distance. Anne was delighted to have Miriam there. Turning to me, she realized why I hadn't played golf and appreciated the opportunity for her sister to visit. Inviting Miriam to breakfast, I suggested she might want to change into something more elegant than jeans, although she looked great as she was. Anne blushed, but quickly recovered. I suggested helping Miriam carry her bag to the guest room while she changed, mentioning that I needed to make a quick call. Observing her walking down the corridor, I soon heard some muted curses. When she returned, holding her unresponsive mobile, she expressed frustration about the dead battery. I sympathized, suggesting she could use the home phone, but she dismissed it, stating that the call wasn't important. She then inquired about where we should have breakfast. Over the weekend, I spent time bonding with my sisters, attempting to lift their spirits. As Miriam prepared to leave on Sunday afternoon, she hugged me, expressing gratitude intentionally. She commented to Anne, "You have a special husband." Anne seemed to wince slightly, but she smiled and hugged me, promising that she would. Despite my confidence that Anne had used the weekend to call Mark, I wasn't concerned if it was on our home phone, as I had it recorded. After Anne went to bed on Sunday night, I checked the recording and discovered that the call had taken place early Sunday morning. Anne told Mark about her unexpected sister's visit, explaining why she couldn't meet on Saturday. Their conversation intrigued me. Their disappointment seemed evident, and I felt I had dealt a serious blow to their relationship. Hopefully this would be enough. Confirming my assessment, their emails on Monday showed, "Mark, are we still meeting this week?" Anne, "I don't think so." Mark, "This is getting too troublesome and starting to annoy me. Besides, Mac has been really nice to me lately, and I feel pretty guilty about running to you behind his back. I think we need to get this over with." Mark, "Don't say that." Anne, "At least one more time." Anne, "No, I'm serious, it's over." Mark, "Well, I can't say I'm not disappointed. You're still an attractive lady, but I know what you're talking about. Maybe it's for the best. I don't want to lose Bobby either. But I hope we can still be friends. And of course, we will remain friends, just not friends with privileges. I achieved success by introducing enough issues into their relationship that it crumbled. Now, I only needed to complete the second part of my plan. When Anne returned home that evening, she appeared downcast and preoccupied, occasionally showing signs of tears in her eyes. Not wanting to intrude but feeling the need to address her behavior, I asked with concern if everything was okay and if she was facing any work problems. She responded, "It's okay," avoiding eye contact, and mentioned that she guessed she was just in a bad mood. I nodded, giving her some space. Secretly, I felt triumphant, convinced that she was mourning the end of her relationship with Mark, even though she had chosen to end it. Sensing her sadness, I knew Anne invested emotions into relationships and struggled with the loss. While her mood seemed to settle, I couldn't help but think that Mark wouldn't likely share a similar reaction. Sarcastically, I thought, "He's probably with Bobby right now." The following morning, Anne seemed in much better spirits. Throughout the day, I didn't come across any more messages between Mark and her, reinforcing my belief that neither had changed their minds. It fueled my growing sense of triumph. That evening after dinner, as Anne entered the study, I had an Edgar Allan Poe book in my lap once again. When she inquired about my reading choice and what it was about, I replied that it was one of my favorites, The Cask of Amontillado. Admitting that she didn't know that one, she snuggled up to me and interrupted my reading to express how wonderful a husband I was. She looked into my eyes and said seriously, "You've been so kind to me in the past few weeks, and I feel very fortunate to have you." Her expressions of gratitude made my heart soar, realizing that I had succeeded. This is the moment I've been waiting for. I gazed at her, anticipating more words from her. She paused, and for a moment, a guilty expression flashed across her face. Her eyes appeared slightly moist. She fervently stated, "I really don't deserve you." In response, I calmly said, "No, I don't deserve you." Then I reached for the desk drawer. Adding sharply, I tossed photos of her meeting Mark at the motel onto her lap. Initially confused by the change in my tone, she struggled to understand what I had given her. As she focused on the frames and grasped their contents, she began to wail, "Oh my God, no, no!" I handed her a copy of the divorce application my lawyer had filed earlier that day. Her breath caught in her throat. "But I thought isn't there any way?" "No," I coldly interrupted, passing her another stack of papers. "And if you're curious about Mark, here's a copy of the letter I sent to Bobby tonight, along with the detective's report. I also sent a similar letter to your sister Miriam, explaining why I am divorcing you." She moaned in pain and sobbed again. "I just don't understand. You've been so loving and caring all these weeks. I can't believe you're so cruel right now. Does all this mean nothing, my dear?" I said evenly. "When you started your little romance, you put an end to all my love for you. That's why I spent the last few weeks trying to end your relationship with Mark. As for how I treated you, well, I wanted to make sure you understood how much you lost when you betrayed me. My goal was to take away from you the same thing you took from me, and from what I can tell, my plan worked perfectly." Anne collapsed on the sofa, sobbing piteously. Before leaving, I placed the Poe book I was reading on top of the other documents. The text was still open on The Cask of Amontillado, and I used a marker to highlight the passage containing the Montresor family motto, "No one dishonors me with impunity."
My interest in off-roading started long before my family moved to Pasadena. As a kid, I spent summers on the dusty trails of Baja California, where my dad taught me how to handle tough terrain in our old Ford Bronco. Over the years, my love for rugged landscapes only grew. When we moved to Southern California, I met Carol, the perfect partner who shared my passion for adventure and had the same grit for the difficult trails we faced. Together, we built friendships with people who loved the thrill of the ride as much as we did. For us, off-roading wasn't just about overcoming nature's obstacles. It reflected how we approached life's challenges. Carol and I built a life together, balancing family and careers while making time for the adventures that kept us energized. Ted and Alice became our closest companions in these trips. We weren't soulmates, but the experiences we shared created a bond that felt strong. Our plans for the upcoming Memorial Day weekend were no exception, a mix of nature, relaxation, and the unpredictability that always came when the four of us hit the trails. "Do you really think that massive SUV of yours can handle those climbs? It's too bulky for the narrow paths," I joked with Ted, setting my beer down. "Sure, you need the legroom with your height, but trust me, I wouldn't try turkey track in that thing. Even my old Land Cruiser, which weighs half as much, barely made it." The late afternoon sun filtered through the leaves, casting a warm glow over the pool area. It was another scorching day in Pasadena, the smog thickening as the mountains stood hazily in the distance. As we sat by Ted and Alice's pool, we enjoyed watching our wives swim, glad they weren't bickering for once. "Hey, they told me this thing can go anywhere, and I'm going to test that," Ted said, sipping his Toots Chief malt and belching loudly. "Yeah, I'm ready for turkey track. I don't care about all those horror stories. More power." The worst road in Anza Borrego Desert State Park between San Diego and the Salton Sea is called Turkey Track because its climbs look like a bird's footprint. The steepest of these routes is full of giant holes and sheer drop-offs. Often, when crawling uphill, only 3 wheels touch the ground. My cautious wife never likes these places and usually gets out of the car, waiting until I manage to get through safely. Luckily, I haven't fallen into an abyss yet. Anza Borrego is not the best place to test drive that thing. There's no way you'll fit through Fat Man in a narrow place. Even a Suzuki Samurai barely squeezes through that gap between the rocks. I took another sip of Wicked Ale, hoping he'd consider my advice. Ted cracked open another Toots Chief and took a big gulp. All right, genius, where do you suggest we go for Memorial Day? And don't say Angelic Cross. That's the weaklings route, full of jeeps, samurais, and soldiers. Ted's wife, Alice, a skilled circuit engineer and one of my respected colleagues, floated over to us lazily. If you've got a problem with weaklings, Teddy, that's your fault. She shot me a pale, freckled grin and licked her lips playfully. My wife, Carol, naturally dark-skinned, swam over too. Hey, give him a break, honey. Alice, he's just being a guy. I think motors are cool too, even the ones you work with. Carol turned toward Ted and then me. So, Bobby, what trail do you suggest? Something not too boring for the holiday, right? I thought for a moment, trying to calm Ted down. I've got the perfect spot. East of Palm Springs, there are some great trails leading to abandoned mines in the Chuckwalla Mountains. They're challenging enough to be fun, but nothing that'll liquidate us. I took another sip of beer. Most of the area is managed by the BLM as wilderness, but we can stick to existing roads and dry riverbeds to Chuckwalla. Sounds good, Alice said. Yeah, it's really beautiful out there, Carol added. Agreement between these two couples by the pool. We're Bob and Carol. They're Ted and Alice. We're neighbors and friends here in Pasadena. Alice and I work together. Our families often caravan in our SUVs. Our kids play together, go to the same school. And right now, on this sticky Sunday afternoon, they're enjoying time at Carol's parents' place in Burbank, where we're raising the next generation of tough Valley girls. But are we best friends? Not really. We're more like close acquaintances with shared interests, like their pool. We get along well enough, which is nice because making new friends is tough. If only Carol weren't so bossy and Ted more reliable. Meanwhile, this afternoon and evening were our time. There's little privacy in this suburban neighborhood. The Homeowners Association doesn't allow high fences. Skinny dipping is only an option after dark, and even then you have to watch out for nosy neighbors. Damn prudes. So, we spent our time relaxing, joking, flirting, getting a bit drunk, talking nonsense, and making plans. Ted and I argued about our upcoming trip. I'm not sure the women had any plans beyond coming along, looking good, and poking fun at each other at every opportunity. As usual, we planned a 4-day getaway for Memorial Day. Would it be fun? Ted just swapped his 4X4 4Runner for a new Sequoia last week and was eager to put it to the test. Like he even knew what that meant. Though Ted was a typical real estate broker when it came to driving his SUV, he suffered from an overconfidence problem. Honestly, the Angel's Cross would suit him better, but his ego wouldn't allow it. At least he still remembered the first aid skills he learned in the Army, so he wasn't completely useless on our trips. Our boozy poolside gatherings often led to debates. Who would bring what and how much? Who would be responsible for food and gear? Then there were the constant personality clashes. I'm focused and detail-oriented, while Ted is laid back and carefree. Carol is strong-willed, and Alice doesn't take crap from anyone. I'm not taking orders from you, Carol. Save that for your staff, Alice snapped. Carol naturally took charge whenever she could, which was why she ran her media marketing agency. Carol's leadership came from her heritage. Carolina Carrillo Ortega descended from a Spanish family that settled in California before it became part of Mexico. Her ancestors were there when Father Serra founded the missions in the 1700s. Families like hers cultivate a certain arrogance. It didn't help that Carol's parents were Hollywood studio executives, and she grew up as a privileged Valley girl. She skillfully uses her old social circle, Valgal, for networking and business. I love her, but she drives me crazy, and everyone else too. Guys are mesmerized by her stunning body until she starts giving orders. Then you better not cross her. My roots are almost as high-ranking. I'm Roberto Pico Ortega, and my family once owned much of what's now Los Angeles before the gringos took it. But I won't be the lizard bragging that his grandfather was a T-Rex. It's dark now, everyone. Swimsuits off, Carol called, always eager to flaunt her lean, sun-kissed body. Alice hesitated, but quickly stripped down. I glanced at her freckled bosoms, and Ted and I followed suit, our shorts joining the pile. We lounged back as Alice settled on Ted's lap and Carol perched on my hips, catching my gaze. So, Bobby, are we swimming some more, or are you going to have sex with me again? Again? I teased, pulling her in for a kiss. Yes, again, but first, you need to get wet. Her executive tone left no room for argument. She grabbed my hand and yanked me into the pool. We splashed in awkwardly, Ted laughing until Alice dunked him with a jiu-jitsu move. The darkness made the pool a safe space for roughhousing. I was pushed aside as Ted and Alice ganged up on Carol. I returned to give Alice a playful slap on the behind, expecting Ted to do the same with Carol. That was about as far as our mischief went, even with the Chardonnay flowing, maybe the occasional accidental pinch, but no real boundaries crossed. Eventually, we climbed out of the pool, settling back into the loungers. Carol, energized, straddled me as our bodies drew close. I glanced over to see Alice kneeling beside Ted, clearly inspired by what we were doing. Carol noticed too, and accepted the challenge, saying, "We can do better." She shifted, intensifying the moment between us. Meanwhile, Ted and Alice followed suit with equal enthusiasm. Though Ted and I weren't as young as we used to be, and our stamina didn't recover as quickly, this added a new level of intrigue. The women didn't seem to mind. The slower the pace, the more enjoyable it became. Suddenly, the alarm went off. Time to get dressed and pick up the kids. Ugh, another work week was upon us. Alice and I carpooled to work at Lunadyne, a small aerospace company near Caltech and NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. My BMW crawled along I-210 at a whopping 10 miles per hour, emissions reaching 15 in the faster sections. God, I hate Monday mornings. As Lunadyne's chief exhaust engineer, I develop jet and rocket exhaust systems. Alice, a brilliant circuit designer, creates electronic control prototypes. She's a smart techie, a strong hiker, and an impressive redhead, but her fiery temper and lack of social skills hold her back. She's not tough enough to be a boss. There's an old engineering joke. Those who can, design, those who can't, manage. Alice and I were housemates in a way. We worked together, had lunch together, went on work trips together, and, yes, even skinny dipped together. We played around with our partners, but nothing serious ever happened between us. Poolside fun wasn't an affair, right? I mean, if we were both there, does it even count? Our conversations during these rides were typically about work, team projects, the usual political and social issues, and of course, past and future off-roading adventures. We stuck to safe topics. "Are you ready for summer?" Alice asked, sipping her mocha. "Do you really think Ted's up for the challenge in Anza Borrego? Not in the world, but in the Chuckwalla Mountains? The roads are rough, but they're in much better condition. They can handle the Sequoia's weight." Ted had been fixated on trading our old 4Runner for something new, and now he had this massive Sequoia, bought with my money, and was eager to try it out. It was like he needed off-roading to prove his masculinity, as if it somehow validated him. But nature wasn't really his thing. Alice took another sip of her mocha. Alice and I both had scouting experiences growing up. We learned survival and improvisation skills. We're engineers, after all. We build things. Carol and Ted, on the other hand, have always been privileged city folk with a let someone else do it attitude. That's why they run their offices and delegate the hard work. I'm no cowboy, though. I just bought a hat. I sang, "Ted drives rough roads to prove he's a tough guy. He needs a tough car, so he buys one. But that's not enough." I switched to another tune. "But he doesn't have cowboy lips," Alice giggled. "Yeah, and you've got those caballero lips. Same thing. But look where that's gotten you." She pouted playfully at me. "Where I ended up with my Caroline, the girl of my dreams. Not a bad deal," I laughed. Alice sighed. "Come on, spare me. Sure, she's got an amazing body, but how do you put up with that bossy attitude? She thinks she's the queen of Pasadena, always ordering me around." "Take a deep breath. Inhale, hold, exhale," I said, trying to keep things calm. "Oh, screw you," she muttered, expressionless. "I only have to deal with her occasionally. You're stuck with her all the time." "I'm not complaining." I bumped the air conditioner up by 1 degree. The day was heating up. "Hey, am I annoying you with my useless husband?" Ted's firm had his name on it, but he barely did any real work. Officially a broker, his staff kept the office running while he played golf or squash with clients, or did other so-called management duties. "Yeah, well, kind of," Alice admitted. "Ted does lead a pretty cushy life, but he's great with the kids and helps with errands. Maybe he's insecure because I'm the primary breadwinner. You men have fragile egos." "All right," I replied. "Let's call a truce. How's that?" We steered the conversation back into the safe zone. Work. That early summer week before Memorial Day 2001 was more about trip planning than actual work. Sure, we worked hard, but most of it was organizing the trip. Alice and I made gear lists and sent our partners shopping for what we needed. Of course, they probably sent their staff to do the actual shopping. That's what employees are for, right? Our kids, as usual, ignored us, but we still made them pitch in. "I'll go through the checklist one more time, Dolly," I said to my youngest daughter, Dolores. "Why do I have to?" she whined. "I've got homework, and you'll do it right after we're done here." Sometimes I think my daughters are socially clueless. They still haven't figured out how to manipulate their parents. What's wrong with kids today? But you always make me do everything, my little drama queen complained. Why can't Roshi do it? Because Rosalita is helping your mom with her list. We're equal opportunity oppressors, you know. Now quit whining and start with the camping gear. Tent? I don't care about your tent right now. Just check it, I said firmly. The sooner we finish, the sooner you can do your homework, watch TV, play games, and call your friends to complain about how we make your life so hard. But first, the tent, I insisted. All right, it's the Sierra Designs tent, the one that smells like moldy nylon, junk. Watch your language. Okay, poles, pegs, rainfly, and bedding. Yeah, all here. A dozen metal pegs, none of the poles look bent. Everything's good. We went through the gear checklist point by point. Camping supplies, tools, spare parts, and everything we'd need for the Land Cruiser. Carol and Roshi were probably doing the same with the kitchen gear, medical kit, clothing, and other necessities. I personally double-checked the car's electronics. Alice was just as meticulous with her planning. And I'm sure her kids, Suzanne and Carrie, were going through the same routine. Ted, of course, would pretend to check out his new 4X4, but would avoid any real work. He'd leave the hard stuff to others, the easy way out. The kids would be staying with Carol's parents, taking all the pets with them. No dogs, cats, ferrets, or iguanas on this trip. Each couple brought their own tents, bedding, folding tables, chairs, food, plenty of water, and extra gas. Tools and portable VHF radios were our backup to cell phones, since reception would be spotty in the steep, narrow canyons, and radios were free to use. As each checkpoint was completed, non-perishable items were packed up. Careful organization, engineer style, makes adventure survivable. It's all about paying attention to reality. Reality. What is it, really? As the old hippie says, reality is a crutch. If you've got a good imagination, reality is like a clutch. A friend of mine drives an old van with a failing gearbox. His dashboard has a message. Reality is what's left when you stop believing in it. It's simple. Does gravity vanish if you don't believe in it? Reality is what bites you in the bum. If it affects you, it's real. Otherwise, why worry about it? I plan off-road trips the same way I design turbos and exhaust systems. Reality bites, and it can be dangerous. The packing and checking went smoothly over the next few days. By Thursday night, we were loaded up and ready. We'd all agreed to cut work short on Friday for an early start. We checked in at our offices, skimmed over some paperwork, grabbed a quick lunch, and left. It was easy for Carol and Ted. They just gave orders. Alice and I had no trouble either, as we were the stars at Lunadyne. We stepped right into summer. Our little caravan set off just after noon, following the usual domestic squabbles. Ted and Carol both deserve PETA tattoos on their foreheads. They can be real pains. Definitely boring. It was early enough that we didn't have to slog through miles of traffic, making it to the outskirts of San Bernardino and Redlands with relative ease. Just a couple of drivers to yell at, and a few trucks that tried to liquidate us. Carol was busy typing away on her little Sony Vaio as we drove, chatting about life, the kids, their school, and our friends. Just small talk. This is the Little Mac project, Carol said, tapping on her keyboard. That's what we call it. We've partnered with the California Macadamia Council to create a marketing plan to make macadamias the world's most popular nut. Peanuts are down, but almonds and pistachios are up. It's a competitive market. You've got to be kidding, Toy, I joked. She gave me a half smile. Yeah, you've heard this before. Macadamia? Really? Do they even grow in California? They do, but not a lot. Most come from Australia, Hawaii, and Central America. The council figures that increasing demand for macadamias from anywhere will still help California farmers. That's where we come in. I'm just brainstorming ideas. Carol typed some more. Sure, they're tasty, but there's plenty of other things that don't sell well either. I swerved slightly to get around a slow pickup truck. It's more than just snack nuts. They make macadamia pasta flour. You've got to try the honey macadamia pancakes. Poppy milk, macadamia oil, macadamia cheese. Though that last one's not great. Macadamia candy? Yeah, all kinds of stuff, but no one really knows about it. Exactly. That's our job, to build awareness. So are you working on an advertising campaign? This isn't your usual thing. No, not traditional advertising. The Macadamia Council wanted dumb slogans like Mac Snack Attack or excited about Macs for TV and billboards. This is the 21st century. Instead, we're running a viral internet campaign. Friendly blogs, infiltrating forums, recipe clubs, idea sessions. No spam, no garbage. It's going to feel spontaneous, organic, with only an online presence. Has this been done before? Some have tried. We track their attempts. The best part is, it's dirt cheap. No expensive media buys, no mass targeting. It's all about creating an atmosphere where macadamia has become a staple on every shopping list. And how do you create an atmosphere? I glanced at the thick smog around us, imagining a nut-flavored fog. There are millions of ways, and we can test them all for almost nothing. Each strategy gets a trial. Change a few words, measure the response. What works, we keep. What doesn't, we toss. Our software automates posts that feel personal. The AI reads and responds or calls for human intervention when needed. Those are the only real costs, and we outsource that. It's a smart system. Carol smiled, clearly proud of her plan. She tapped away again when we were interrupted. Carol picked up the VHF radio from the dashboard. Say that again, Alice. I didn't catch it. I said we could use a break. Let's stop at the dinosaurs in Cabazon. Got it. We'll take the Cabazon exit and meet under the Brontosaurus. It was actually a 150-foot-long concrete apatosaurus, but everyone calls it a Brontosaurus. I parked our beige Land Cruiser by the restrooms. Ted's red Sequoia pulled up behind us. The women hurried to the bathrooms while Ted and I stretched out, gazing at the dinosaurs, Big Denny and the towering T-Rex. Cabazon, nestled between the San Bernardino and San Jacinto mountain ranges, is practically a village, dominated by these roadside dinosaurs until the Morongo Cahuilla Indians built a casino resort nearby. I'll never forget the first time I stopped here with Alice, Ted said, sipping his soda and waving at Denny. It was before we got married. I took her to a real estate conference in Palm Springs. On the way, she needed a break, just like today. Afterward, we climbed the stairs into the gift shop inside Denny's belly. There was no one there. Ted gestured again at the dinosaur. Alice was hot, very hot. We'd been fooling around in the car, so she took off her underwear, and we had Zex right inside the dinosaur. He laughed. Now there's a creationist museum here. These guys are idiots, but I love selling to them. Fanatical fundamentalists will believe anything. Ted could be annoying. Alice emerged from the restroom, looking slightly annoyed, but not overly angry. Carol came out a moment later, walking more slowly. I figured their argument inside hadn't been too bad. Why did I assume they fought? Because they always did. Two alpha females, neither willing to submit. We got back into our cars, and I took the lead again. Carol started to speak. I raised my hand. I don't want to hear it. Just stop picking on Alice. Carol opened her mouth, but I waved her off. Number just no. She retreated back to her Vio, sulking. The sun was high as we crossed Whitewater Pass, a 2-mile gap in the coastal mountains, and descended past scorching Palm Springs into the Colorado desert, dropping below sea level. We passed Desert Hot Springs, Palm Desert, and Indio, stopping for gas and date milkshakes. Then, we climbed back above sea level, moving through the Chuckwalla Valley, heading south toward the fork in the road before Desert Center. And here we were. We stopped at a gravel crossing in the middle of a barren landscape. Everyone got out to stretch, breathe in some dusty summer air, and take stock of the situation. I waved Ted over and spread the map on the hood of my Land Cruiser. He walked over with a dramatic but completely unnecessary swagger. "Where's the trail, Shmizabe?" Ted asked, closing his eyes and pretending to assess the direction. The sun was behind us. That way. I pointed southeast and grinned. Ted either didn't know or didn't care that chemise meant idiot in Spanish. I tapped the map. We'll take the Red Cloud Mine Trail into the Chuckwalla Mountains. The trail beyond the mine is tough but doable, and I know a good camping spot. We've still got 3 or 4 hours of daylight, so the sooner we settle in tonight, the earlier we can get started tomorrow. Great, I brought some smoke, Ted said, looking way too excited. Yeah, a real party, Alice responded with a slight eye roll. We engineers smoked a little to unwind, sure. But our executive partners? They smoked more for the thrill. I just hoped Ted wouldn't be too foggy in the morning when we hit the rough trails. We climbed back into our cars and continued driving deeper into the desert mountains. I led the way, steering us past prickly ocotillos, chalas, and grand prickly pear cacti weaving through green creosote and yucca bushes, and ascending a steep trail through narrow gorges. Eventually, we reached a wide, flat spot where Carol and I had camped before. I parked near an old fire pit with Ted right behind me. I chose this spot based on the real estate mantra: location, location, location. It was open, but private. Nobody could sneak up on us. Privacy was important, but more so, it had a direct line of sight to the cell tower at Chuckwalla Pass. We called home to let everyone know we'd arrived safely. "This is it! It's starting," Carol shouted as she leapt out of the Land Cruiser. "We're back in nature, so let's be naturists." She immediately pulled off her shorts and underwear over her hiking boots and tossed off her bikini top. "God, this feels amazing." And she looked amazing, too. I stripped down to just my climbing boots, and Ted quickly followed, his eyes lingering on Carol. Alice grimaced slightly, but soon joined in, shedding her clothes. Her pale, freckled skin wasn't made for much direct sun, but the evening light was soft. I won't lie, I stole a few glances at our lovely ladies. We set up our quick open tents, laid out tables and chairs, and organized the minimal kitchen, all while playfully swatting each other's bare backsides. The camp came together quickly. Carol turned on some salsa music from her boombox and started dancing, her tan bosoms bouncing with the beat. I joined her, moving to the rhythm. Meanwhile, Ted pulled out a box full of wine, cocktails, and beer, and Alice passed out drinks, dancing around Ted, her straight hair flowing like cherry cider. As the sun dipped behind the western mountains, we tumbled and laughed like kids, but the cool breeze eventually forced us to put on light shirts. Ted and Alice whipped up a hot dinner while Carol and I built a fire with compressed wood, not local vegetation. We spent the evening eating, drinking, joking, and singing around the fire, before crawling into our tents for a night filled with loud zeks and even louder snoring. It was a good night. The cool desert morning didn't invite any undressed frolicking. We all emerged from the tents in our tracksuits, smiling groggily. Alice lit the Coleman stove to boil water for Mexican mocha, instant coffee, cocoa, and tequila, while Ted made us some hearty burritos. Breakfast of champions. We sat by the morning fire, talking about business and the day ahead. Carol's chair was next to mine. "Last night was quite the race," she teased, her eyes sparkling mischievously. "Where are we headed today, Bobby?" I chuckled. "You're the one who does all the racing. I'm just your pony, and today we'll ride into the sunset or something." Alice put her hand on Ted's thigh. "Hello, Silver," she whispered. "Don't be a stranger." Ted laughed, squeezing her bosom. "I just love going deep into a dark canyon," he rasped. "Even with ambushes." "All right, folks," I interrupted, waving the compass. "When you're done with your love mine, we've got a different kind of rough ride ahead. No cell service or GPS where we're going. Once we leave camp, the phones will die, and any rock wall over 45 degrees will block GPS signals. So let's keep the VHF radios on. We can send each other obscene messages if needed." Alice smirked. "Sure, Bob, and you can talk dirty about that XJ9E project you're so into." Carol smacked my hand. "Say one more word, and you'll learn more than you ever wanted to know about macadamia nuts. They probably make oil for lotions, too." With jokes and laughter, we broke camp. Gear was packed up and secured tightly for the rough roads ahead. Trash was burned, and the campfire coals were doused with urine. The only things we left behind were cold ashes and disturbed dust. Responsible camping. The day was a blast. We raced along dry riverbeds and rocky trails to old mines and tunnels. We had to use chains to get over steep, muddy spots and cross broken gaps. We got filthy. Really filthy. As the day heated up, we cared less and less about clothing, sticking to sturdy shoes and towels on the car seats to soak up sweat. At every stop, we wandered around under the hot sun. Thankfully, we managed to avoid the cactus thickets. By evening, we were sweaty, dirty, and exhausted as we set up our new campsite. The camp shower came in handy, much like the tequila sunrise dessert, and of course, the loud, enthusiastic zeks after dinner. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Our new camp had a clear view of another cell tower, so we called home to check in. Carol's parents handled the kids' minor issues with their usual calm, and no one really missed us. Carol and Ted connected their mini laptops to USB cellular adapters, logging into their office servers to handle emails and notes. Everything seemed calm, except for the weather forecast. We received a warning about a storm building to the southeast, a monsoon about a month early. Normally, rains don't arrive from the Gulf of Mexico until early July. In Tucson, they say, dry on the 4th, wet on the 5th, but not this year. Looks like those climate change folks were right. The forecast said the storm wouldn't hit us until late on Memorial Day, after we were already on our way home. So no big deal, right? Problems could wait until tomorrow. Oh, there's the problem! Coyotes howled in the distance, strange lights flickered, and there were even fires in the sky. Distant booms echoed. This wasn't surprising since we were camped near a military shooting range in the Chocolate Mountains, where the Navy and Marines practiced bombing and strafing. The flashing strobes, howling coyotes, and buzzing summer beetles filled the night, while pilots flew overhead. I don't know about you, but I find those flashes and rumbles exciting. Carol, too. More lights and rumbles in the sky, more howls in the distance, and even louder howls and rumbles on the ground. Dawn came earlier than yesterday. Our camp on the eastern slope of the Chuckwallis caught the first rays of sunlight over the vast Sonoran Desert, stretching over 100 kilometers to the invisible Colorado River, the western edge of Arizona. The quiet songs of desert thrushes, nightjars, and doves echoed all around. We dressed lightly in shorts and t-shirts for another breakfast of champions, packed up camp, and drove up the mountain, crossing the saddle to the western slope, navigating deep, rocky cuts beneath eerie Joshua trees and massive ironwoods, just below the pinyon, pine, and juniper zone. While descending a steep, sandy riverbed, I misjudged a turn. We slid and slammed into a hard block of quartz monzonite. I pressed the gas, but the car didn't budge. Oops! Ted and Alice's Sequoia was ahead, so I honked to get their attention. Ted reversed carefully, and we all got out to assess the situation. "Brilliant move, genius," Ted grumbled. I had to agree. "Let me check." I crawled under the car. The oil pan was fine, but the driveshaft's universal joint was broken. Damn. I crawled back out and delivered the bad news. "You brought the tools and spare parts, right?" Carol asked. "Tools, yes. Lots of spare parts? Yes, but no spare universal joint. I could fix it if we had welding equipment, but we don't." I felt deflated. "What about soldering?" Alice asked. "Ted, didn't you bring a soldering kit?" "Yeah, it's in the car," Ted said. "But will solder hold?" I thought for a moment. "It might work for a smooth ride as long as we don't push it. No sudden starts or stops, just even pressure. But you might have to tow us back to I-10 or at least to the descent. Desert Center is only a few miles from there, and I can get a replacement part." "Better grab the soldering kit, Ted." "We don't want to be stuck here all day," Carol said. "Yes, Your Majesty." Ted grumbled as he rummaged in the back of the Sequoia. I mumbled to myself as I pulled out the hydraulic jacks and toolbox. We jacked up the Land Cruiser, and I slid underneath. Alice handed me tools like a nurse passing surgical instruments. Removing the broken part was easier than expected, thanks to a strong, cool wind from the southeast. The wind was refreshing and damp. Oops. I climbed out, and Alice helped me up. Ted and Carol stood a short distance away, talking quietly. I glanced at the sky. Clouds were thickening. Alice followed my gaze, swallowing nervously. "Is that what I think it is?" she asked. "Yeah." We reached the same conclusion. "The monsoon is arriving early, isn't it?" A drop of rain fell on my forehead. Another landed on Alice's glasses. She automatically wiped it off. And more is coming. Rain soaked the girls' t-shirts, and since neither was wearing a bra, things got a little more revealing. I should get back to work. Cleaning and soldering the parts didn't take long. The soldered joint hissed as it cooled under occasional raindrops. I covered it with a piece of cactus to protect it from the increasing rain. "Hey guys," I called to Ted and Carol. "Conference time is over. We need to get out of this riverbed now." They looked at me with confusion. I pointed at the dark clouds rolling in over the peaks. "This is prime flash flood territory. Ted, grab the chains. Let's head to that hill over there, about 100 yards away. We'll be safe there, but we need to move." It was a bit tricky. We chained the cars together and secured the Sequoia's front winch cable to a sturdy old ironwood tree halfway up the slope. With four-wheel drive in the winch, we managed to pull the Land Cruiser out of the riverbed, nearly reaching the anchor tree, and just in time. We heard a deep rumble like one of the planes from the day before, but much closer and louder. The ground shook, the rock walls trembled, and then chaos hit us. A roaring, surging torrent of water. Waves of muddy water carried boulders, uprooted bushes, tree limbs, cacti, and even an antelope. 90 seconds earlier, and we'd have been swept away in the flood. I looked at Carol in the passenger seat. Her usually tan complexion had gone almost ghostly pale. "Crap," she whispered, trembling. "That was close, wasn't it?" I reached out and took her hand. "Too close. But we're safe now, at least from the flood. We'll get out of here, don't worry." I gently stroked her bare thigh, trying to reassure her, though I wasn't particularly worried for myself. The radio crackled. I pressed the button. "How's it going, buddy?" Ted's voice came through, trying to sound casual, but with a hint of tension. "All good now. Thanks for the help. But we should move higher up, to that flat area, so I can get back under the car and reassemble everything. There's a big pine tree up there we can anchor to." A few minutes later, we were pulled out to safer ground. The storm clouds passed over the peaks. The wind and rain stopped, and patches of sunlight began to filter through. We stood there, momentarily stunned by the sudden calm. "Well, damn, that was something," Alice said. "So what now?" "We're not going anywhere for at least an hour," I said. "It'll give the sand time to dry out and harden enough for driving." "Ted and I were thinking about that," Carol chimed in. "Your soldered drive shaft cross might not hold up. This riverbed connects to the Red Cloud Mine Trail, right? We were thinking of driving down to Desert Center to pick up a new part. They're cheap, right? And if we're going to do it, today's the day. Tomorrow's a holiday and most places will be closed." I considered it. "That makes sense, but maybe you should take Alice with you. Why does Carol need to go?" "Because it was my idea," Carol said firmly. "Besides, I haven't ridden in the Sequoia yet." Alice glanced at Carol, then at me. "Oh, let them go," she said, sounding a little irritated, probably from the prospect of listening to more of their chatter about work and entertainment. I hesitated, but it seemed I was outnumbered. "All right, let me get the part number. Make sure you get an original part, not a cheap knockoff, and keep the radio on, just in case." We set up a tarp over the back of the Land Cruiser and unfolded the table and chairs to wait. I walked down to the riverbed to test the sand. It was compacted and felt solid. The water had stopped an hour earlier. I returned to camp. Alice and I hugged and kissed our partners before they left. "You know what this is about, right?" Alice asked, turning to me. "No, tell me," I said, half expecting something odd. "They want time alone, to have sex." I must have given her the classic open-mouthed "what" expression. "Wait, cheating on us? My Carol? Your Ted?" Alice looked sad but sure. "That's what this weekend is about. They planned it. Not the car damage, of course, but they knew they'd find an excuse to get some time alone together." "Why do you think they're planning something like that?" "Ted's not great with email security. He deletes messages, empties the trash, even defragments the drive, but doesn't clean it properly. It's easy to recover. Besides being a great circuit engineer, Alice was a master of computer security and encryption. A few things he said and did made me suspicious. Hacking his laptop was easy. I'm sure there are traces on Carol's Vio, too. "Do you want to check?" My stomach churned, not from hunger. Do I want to see proof that the woman I've loved my whole life has betrayed me? No, but I'd rather know than stay in the dark. Let's see if she left anything. Carol had taken her bag, but not her laptop. I turned it on, and Alice took over, expertly navigating the system. "What's her usual password?" Alice asked. "She mostly uses her birth date, October 2065. "All right, let's see. Oh yeah, here's her mail. Nothing out of the ordinary. Let me restore her deleted emails from the last few weeks. Tip-top." "Tip-top?" "Yeah, there are a bunch of emails to and from Ted, but they're encrypted with a different password." Alice tried a few password-cracking methods. "Maybe try my birth date," I suggested. "Wait, I have an idea." Alice tapped the keys again and suddenly exclaimed, "Got it." Guess what password she used? Ted's birth date. She scrolled through the decrypted messages on the screen. It was all there, glowing on the LCD. Conspiracies, plans, love notes. They'd been seducing each other for weeks, and sleeping together for at least that long. There were also vague mentions of a project that could lead to legal trouble, though none of the emails contained specific details. "What is this project?" Alice muttered quietly, almost to herself. "Let me check the My Documents folder. Type top. Nope, nothing obvious here. Where else could it be?" She ran her finger along the Explorer window. "Oh, wait, there's a flash drive. Let's see what's on it." A few more clicks then. Ted's password again. Yes, and then, oh crap. I moved closer to Alice, our heads nearly colliding as we leaned in to read the screen together. There it was. Ted's clients, Carol's clients, fraud plans. Plans to drain their accounts and transfer the money to offshore banks. Plans to disappear with the money outside the U.S. and abandon their families. Alice shook her head in disbelief. I knew Ted was scheming something, but I never imagined this. I've never found anything like this on his laptop. I'm sure they keep all their sensitive data on flash drives. If Carol had taken hers, we'd never have known. She looked at me seriously. As long as they kept their computers offline when using these drives and removed them before reconnecting, no amount of searching would have found this. The safest way to transfer data is still by handing someone a flash drive. A wave of paranoia washed over me. They don't actually think they can get away with this, do they? They must have some backup plan. A scapegoat. Who are they going to frame? Are we in danger? I asked, locking eyes with Alice. Do you think they'll try to set us up? Wouldn't you? I responded. Yes. The paranoia sank deep into me as Alice returned to the keyboard. I'll check the later files. Yeah, here they are. Type top, type top. Damn, this is a setup. She pointed to the screen. They're going to funnel all the stolen money through our personal accounts, then disappear, leaving clues that make it look like we staged the fraud and eliminated our spouses when they started to suspect. They're planning to run off to Rio. We're the ones headed to prison. A whirlwind of thoughts and emotions exploded inside me. This wasn't just complicated, it was life-ruining. Want to know what went through my mind at that moment? A mix of shock, disbelief, and nausea swirled in me, as if my hopes were collapsing into a void. I glanced at Alice, searching for answers. What now? Well, I think it's safe to say our marriages are done. Kaput. What can we do? Go to the police? If Ted and Carol get arrested, they'll spend all our money on lawyers. We'll be broke. And the kids? I don't even know what would happen. I felt like the ground was giving way beneath me. Alice looked the saddest I'd ever seen her. I don't have family here like you do. No support, she said, biting her lip, lost in thought. I lifted her chin. We're engineers. Let's approach this like a problem to be solved. She nodded, though her eyes remained dark. Okay, let's break it down, I continued. First, they're planning to frame us. Divorce is inevitable. What else? If we go to the police, they'll ruin us financially. If we confront them, they'll fight us for custody, property, everything. We still lose. Alice's desperation grew. Could we shut down their business, put them out of commission? Could we? I let the thought hang in the air and Alice read my face. No, she said firmly. No violence. We can't even consider that. I sighed. I couldn't hurt Carol, no matter what she's done. I loved her too much. Alice's expression mirrored mine, torn between love and betrayal. I sighed again, a vivid image playing in my mind. Alice and me on the slope, watching the sequoia roll down the riverbed, crushing our cheating spouses. What a tragedy. But no, we couldn't do that. All right, I said, trying to remain logical. What are our immediate options? Should we report them now or wait until we get home? Should we send some kind of message to cover ourselves, maybe to Lunadyne? Something that documents what we know? Alice brightened. That's a good idea. Is there a cell tower nearby? We could call our offices. It's a holiday weekend, so the calls would go to voicemail. We can let them know what we've found, and if something happens to us, there'll be a record. I've got extra flash drives. I'll copy everything, and we'll have more evidence. Great thinking, I said, feeling a bit relieved. But we need to play it cool when they get back. Act like everything's normal for now. Yeah, but I need to make some advance calls. I'll start copying all the files. You go find a good signal. I checked the topographic map. There should be a cell tower a few hundred feet higher up, I shouted to Alice as I headed up the slope, holding my phone like a divining rod, hoping for even a single bar of signal. No luck. I climbed higher, reaching the saddle. Still nothing. Maybe I'd have better luck at the top of one side of the saddle. I climbed onto a pile of rocks towering about 25 feet above the slope. The granite boulders, some as wide as 10 feet, were dotted with prickly pear cacti growing from the cracks. Carefully, I made my way to the top and pulled out my phone. One bar, there was a signal. I shouted in triumph, but before I could savor the victory, I felt the ground shift beneath me. The pile of stones moved. The massive rocks I'd climbed decided they had a better place to be, downhill, taking me along for the ride. A strange feeling of weightlessness overtook me. The world around me went silent as I stood atop it, and then it vanished, and I fell. Not small pebbles, but huge boulders, each one larger than me and capable of crushing me in an instant, tumbled down with me. I danced down the rock pile as the boulders became my unwelcome partners. Pain surged through me. I braced for oblivion, but it didn't come. When sound returned, I heard the crashing of rocks all around. I didn't hear my ankle snap, but I sure felt it. Oh, crap, I muttered. Do you believe in miracles? I hadn't until that moment. I was alive, conscious, not crushed. Aside from a broken ankle, I was unscathed. A miracle. Alice came running up the hill to where I lay. Bobby! Oh, Bobby! She cried, collapsing beside me. Please be alive, Bobby. Please don't be dead. I turned my head to see her tear-streaked face. I'm not dead, Alice. I'm not even that hurt. My ankle's broken, I think. Just calm down. Alice clung to me, lying in the damp sand, kissing my face and sobbing. Oh, Bobby, I thought I'd lost you. You're my best friend. I can't lose you. She eventually regained her composure, sitting up and brushing the sand from her shorts and shirt. "You can't stay here. I'll help you get down to the Land Cruiser." "Maybe." "Yes, if you can support me. I'll stand on one leg." With her help, I hopped down the hill, balancing on my good leg, my arm around Alice's shoulders. A couple of times, we almost stumbled into the prickly pear thickets. When we reached the car, I carefully sat in a folding chair, and Alice propped my legs up on another one, elevating them. It almost felt like a vacation. "You can't stay here either," Alice said. "I'll set up the camp and help you into the tent. You need to rest until they get back." Alice moved quickly, setting up the equipment. Soon, I was lying comfortably in the tent, my feet elevated on inflatable pads, my head near the doorway. Alice sat next to me on the ground. "You're lucky," she said, eyeing my condition. "Besides not being crushed into a pancake, I mean. But I remember enough first aid from my Girl Scout days. Your legs are elevated, you're not in shock, and your skin's not clammy. Just pain." She rummaged through the medical kit. "Here, take these painkillers. Probably best not to mix them with tequila," she joked, handing me some pills and a bottle of Gatorade. "Now we wait. Ted was a medic in the Army, so he'll know what to do when he gets back." "Remember, we have to act like everything's normal," I reminded her. We waited, chatting and making plans. The sun was past its peak, and it felt like summer had arrived. Ted and Carol had been gone for 5 hours. "I wonder what excuses they'll have," I mused. The radio crackled occasionally, but there was never a clear signal. Alice tried reaching them on multiple channels, but the rock canyons blocked the waves, leaving us in a dead zone. We finally heard an engine rumble as the Sequoia pulled up next to the Land Cruiser. Ted and Carol got out looking dirty and exhausted. "Sorry it took so long," Ted said. "We had to clear trees and debris. The winch wasn't enough, so it took a lot of work." "Here come the excuses," I thought as Carol walked toward the tent. "Bobby, why are you in the tent? Are you okay?" she asked, concerned. "I had a little accident," I said. "Fell off some rocks. I think my ankle's broken." Carol turned pale and knelt beside me. "Oh God, Bobby, are you all right?" she asked, holding my head. If I were fine, I wouldn't be lying here, I thought, but instead said, "I'll live." Ted, now in medic mode, knelt beside me. "Broken, huh? Let me check." He had Alice grab the first aid kit and started checking me over. "Looks like you're stable," he said after examining me. "Your ankle's definitely broken. I'll put on an air splint for now. You'll need an x-ray soon, but you're stable." "So, what's the plan?" Carol asked. "Tow the car or take Bobby to a doctor?" "I can't walk, but I can crawl," I interrupted. "Help me fix the car, and I'll ride in the back seat." "Alice, you're better at off-road driving, right?" Carol admitted she wasn't great off-road, so Alice agreed to drive. The rain started as they helped me under the car to replace the part. Once done, Carol told Ted and Alice to step away for a bit. She crawled under the car next to me and hugged me gently. "Bobby, are you really okay? Tell me the truth," she asked, her worry seeming genuine. "I've been better, but I'll survive." "I couldn't bear to lose you," she whispered, sliding her hand down my body. She lowered my jeans slightly, saying, "I'll do anything to make you feel better." The rain picked up as they pulled me from under the car and laid me in the back seat, propping my leg up with pillows. Ted secured my leg before we set off. "Ready to go?" Carol's voice crackled on the radio. "We're good," I responded. As we drove, the rain worsened. "I can't see anything," Alice muttered. I pressed the radio. "Carol, what's ahead?" Her voice broke through. "We're nearing a side channel." Then silence. A loud crash followed. "Stop!" I yelled. Alice slammed the brakes, then jumped out of the car, returning pale and shaken. "They're gone," she sobbed. "A flash flood. The riverbeds are wiped out. There's nothing left." She broke down, her sobs shaking her body. "Oh, God, what am I going to tell the kids?" "Ted and Carol are gone. Their parents, their children." "Wait," I interrupted. "Why am I talking like they're dead? Alice, how sure are you? Try the radio again. Maybe they found a safe spot." Alice clung to hope and grabbed the radio. I tried it again. Nothing. Another attempt. Still nothing. The storm passed, the rain stopped, and the sky cleared, but I could only see from where I was lying. "Stay here," Alice said, though I didn't have a choice. She set the handbrake, jumped out, leaving the door open, and disappeared into the cool air. The key beeped nonstop while she was gone. When she returned, she said, "The road looks clear. I'll try to get us down. I'll stop when it's safe and look for the Sequoia. You keep trying the walkie-talkie." No sign of them? I asked. She shook her head grimly and began driving slowly down the mountain. No sign of Ted or Carol. She stopped at our previous campsite where there was cell signal and dialed emergency. When the police come, we're not mentioning Ted and Carol's plans, right? Alice asked nervously. Right, you might want to clear Carol's computer and hide the flash drives too. No need for a big investigation. That was exactly what I was thinking. Their fraud wasn't complete, and there was no point involving the authorities. An hour before sunset, the first helicopter arrived, followed by a Navy evac helicopter. The corpsman diagnosed me with mild shock, hypothermia, and atrial fibrillation. They loaded me into the helicopter and flew me to Eisenhower Medical Center. Alice stayed behind to deal with the Rangers and police. It was easily the worst Sunday of my life. I watched nightfall through the hospital window as they kept me under observation, more for my heart and hypothermia than my injured ankle. I worried about Alice, unable to use my phone. Guilt gnawed at me. I imagined Ted and Carol's end of lives, crushed by rocks from the flash flood. Though it wasn't my fault, I felt a heavy sense of guilt, loss, and loneliness. What would have happened if things hadn't turned out this way? What if Carol hadn't cheated, Alice hadn't discovered their plans, or I hadn't fallen, causing us to leave in the storm? What if Ted and Carol were still alive? If only. At 10 p.m., I heard a commotion outside my room. Alice burst in, barely restrained by two small nurses. "Call security if you need to, but you'll need backup to get me out," she shouted. Then saw me. She rushed over, hugging me tight. "Oh, Bobby." She finally let go, wiping her eyes. Our fingers locked together. "Any news?" I asked. She nodded, eyes filled with tears. They didn't search long. A patrol helicopter spotted the Sequoia a mile and a half away in a side channel. The car was destroyed. Ted and Carol, too. She gripped my hand hard. "They're gone, Bobby." Tears streamed down her face as we sat in silence, holding each other. A stern nurse, probably the head of the department, came in with two guards. "We're flexible with visits in these cases, Miss Olson, but you can't treat my staff like that. You've got 5 more minutes, then my guys will escort you out. Don't waste your time." She left, but the guards stayed. "I've called everyone," Alice said. "Carol's parents are bringing the kids tomorrow. They wanted to fly tonight, but I told them no. My dad, Ted's mom, and your sister will be here too." "And you?" "I hope you're not staying here all night. I'm not that sick," I joked. "No, I got a motel down the street. I need sleep, but I'll be here in the morning. We'll figure everything out." She kissed me softly. "I've been thinking about us," I said, holding her hand. "We're great friends, but we're not soulmates or romantic partners." She nodded and squeezed my hand. "But I want us to stay friends, no matter what." She smiled. "Maybe with benefits." I grinned. "We'll see." We had emotional family meetings. The kids bounced back quicker than the adults. Life went on. The medical examiner ruled Ted and Carol's end of life's accidental. Only Alice and I knew about their betrayal. We buried them quietly and hid the flash drives, just in case. Their insurance covered our mortgage and set up college funds for our daughters. Alice and I kept working, though we didn't need to. Some of our projects even reached Mars. Ted and Carol's businesses thrived under their deputies, and Alice and I became half-owners, living comfortably. After a few months, Alice and I realized we were more than friends with benefits. The Ortegas moved into the Olsons' house, and I moved into Alice's bedroom. We got married on Halloween in a Gothic room near the Southwestern Museum in costume, and we were glowing. Alice and I don't talk much about the past, but sometimes it comes up. One night, after Zex, Alice teased, "What's next, best friend?" "Next time you'll be the showgirl and I'll be the bum," I joked. She laughed. "Or maybe pygmies and hyenas." "Why not?" After a pause, I said, "It's funny how we ended up here. I never saw this coming." "I know," Alice agreed. "You were the perfect gentleman, and I was the hard-working mom. We were on different paths. Do you think they knew we'd end up like this? Is that why they strayed? I loved Carolina so much, and I still do, just like you with Ted. But they took a wrong turn. How did that happen?" I shook my head. "Where's the justice in this?" Alice touched my lips. "It wasn't karma or fate. They were careless. That's it." My logical side accepted her words, but a part of me wasn't convinced. One last thought on prickly pear cacti, also known as Indian figs, Opuntia ficus indica. They grow in dense thickets, their flowers glowing like neon in the sunlight. They remind me of Carol's eyes the last time I saw her. I'll never forget that.